We'll call this meeting to order. Special meeting Wednesday, October 29th, 2014. And we won't do a roll call. It seems like we're all here tonight. With that, we'll get an approval of the agenda. Any objections to the one item that we're considering?
I'd rather be home watching the.
Yeah, that's right, the World
Royals
Series.
beat the Giants.
That's right.
Fighting words.
Well. Yeah. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
It is approved. Public comment for items not on the agenda.
Yes.
And seeing none, we'll jump right into it. Madam City Manager.
We can get right into this, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Before you this evening, this is our second special meeting regarding the city's budget. On September 30th, you conducted your first special budget meeting. The council has, as you're aware, scheduled some special meetings regarding the budget and the general plan update because there's such large items. To put them on a regular agenda would just, bog down our regular city business. At the last meeting, the council asked us to come back with 3 items for discussion. One of them was a request to review all of our contracts and consultants. A request was for a more in-depth discussion regarding the consultant, the funding source, what services they provided, and whether or not it was possible to reduce the services, eliminate the services, and what the impacts would be. There are a number of charts attached to your staff report, and the department heads are all here this evening to go through each of their charts with you. The second item that the council requested information on were the projected costs in fiscal years 15-16 and 16-17 for the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, which we affectionately refer to as NPDES compliance. We prepared a preliminary estimate, and when we get to that point of the staff report, staff is here to go into the details of our NPDES compliance. The reason this is even discussed at all is because in prior years, our storm drain costs were included in our sewer fund to keep our sewer rates as reasonable as possible. The storm drain costs were pulled out. So for the current fiscal year we're in right now, the council authorized general fund reserves to cover those costs. I will need direction going forward for the next 2-year budget on the funding source, of which there's primarily 2. There's gas tax and there's general fund. So it could potentially be a significant amount of money, which is the reason why we're discussing that this evening. The last part of the staff report was the council asking for information regarding our health and benefits costs total citywide and our PERS, which is our California Public Employees Retirement System, what those costs are, and that's towards the back of your staff report, and Director Cox will cover that part of it. So if the council is ready, we can go to page 1 of the attachments. I don't know if the council really would like me to go. It's elected and appointed, administration and technology. I put them all on one chart. If you want me to go one by one, or if you would prefer to highlight particular things, I would like to, however you'd like to proceed.
I'm okay with you, quickly going over
Okay.
each of the items, and then, I wouldn't go over in too much depth, though.
Okay.
So,
Maybe if somebody has a question about it, I went through, I'm
Yeah.
familiar with them, unless we're just doing it
for the public, yeah, I was doing it for the public, but, there's a lot of them, so that's why maybe, if the city manager wants to pick out, a couple to highlight and then keep going.
Why don't we just focus on maybe the big ones?
Yeah.
The
fine with me.
little things, $15,000, maybe if somebody has a question about those, bring them up, but maybe you can talk about just the big ones.
That's fine.
Okay.
Is that okay?
The first big item on item 1 would be our legal services. The cost for the legal services are spread between the general fund and our internal service fund. There's also a small amount that is in our successor agency budget for advice that the city attorney's office provides for our former redevelopment agency. The total amount of that contract in the current fiscal year, all of these numbers are for this current fiscal year we're in right now. The total is $275,000. That includes two things. One is the basic retainer for general legal services of $126,000. That was a newly reduced contracted price. The council did solicit proposals, and in January of 2013 entered into a new contract, and it was a reduction of about $2,000 a month in our retainer. The other amount above the 126, it's $125,000 approximately, are for all of the specialized legal services, litigation services. For example, some of the things that would fall under this category are when we do the water rate increases and all of the city attorney work related to making sure we're complying with the Prop 218 process. We do eventually get sued, and the council does say in some occasions we need to defend ourselves. If the city attorney's office is used, that comes out of that line item. The last fiscal year, as you're aware, there were legal costs incurred when we were dealing with the Arcadia water issues. Those are the kinds of things. Those things are always pre-approved by the city council. Any litigation is always approved by city council, whether we're initiating it or responding to it. There's formal approval by city council before we spend any money on it.
Can I comment on, I just want to, for the three new members, you know, we did go to bid with this, as the city manager just said, and our firm was the cheapest of the qualified ones, and John, our mayor, and Chris Kerber were on that subcommittee, and they went through and screened all the ones and came back and brought us two choices that they felt could meet our needs, and our current firm was the lowest cost, and as the city manager said, reduced their costs. So, I mean, we could go out to bid again, but the outcome, I don't think, is going to be a lot different.
Just a point of clarification. I think we all know the answer to this, but when we have to face litigation, we're paying litigation fees in addition to these fees. That's $275,000. Isn't that correct?
I don't understand.
Someone
the
comes
question.
down the road and sues us, it costs us $150,000.
Oh, the settlement. So let's
Yeah,
say a
that
city
is-
employee crashes into a private
Right.
residence car and they
Any
sue
kind of
us,
scenario.
and it costs $10,000 to fix the car. That is not in this line item. You are correct.
Right.
There's a separate line item. It's actually in the Human Resources
Right.
Risk Management budget to pay out losses.
Right, okay.
Mhm.
Well, and I think Councilmember Goss might also be asking, we can just clarify it. So if we get, and I think it depends, but if we get sued in a lawsuit, some of it might be included in this cost, our legal fees to defend ourselves, but some of it might not, depending on the nature of the lawsuit. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted the public to be.
So let's say we got sued by Southern California Edison for some reason, because we didn't let them,
Didn't let them have.
we didn't let them put the
telephone.
pole right in front of City Hall.
Mhm.
Would that be included in these costs, $275,000?
It would be included in the 125, yes.
So what type of litigation wouldn't be included when we go out to, for example, our specialty litigation firms that help us through, and I think that's what,
We have two specialty litigation firms that we currently contract. One is for personnel matters, and that's Lieber Cassidy Whitmore. That's special litigation pertaining to personnel matters. And then we have a code enforcement attorney on retainer for code enforcement matters. And at this point, those are the only three attorneys the city's retained. I can tell you, when I first came to Sierra Madre 8 years ago, there were many more attorneys. There were attorneys for, the city would for a lot of different matters, bring in, and consolidating it, we saved money. We used to spend more on attorney services than we do today.
got it. Thank you.
The next big item of $78,000 is the property tax administrative fee. We cannot reduce that or eliminate that. That is what the county charges us to administer our property tax and send it to us. They have an administration fee, so we can't reduce it. We have to pay it. If we didn't pay it, they'd probably just take it out of our property tax remittance, because they need their processing, their money to their administrative paperwork to send us our property taxes. City auditor is $40,000. That's an annual for our annual audit. That includes our audit of all of our funds, including the successor agency, is in the $40,000.
And Madam City Manager, do we think that's competitive?
We do. We went out to bid in 2012. We just awarded this contract in 2012.
Is that before
The
we
first audit they did was in 2013. We contracted for 3 years, so the 2013, 2014, 2015 audit are covered by this company. At that point, before we get to the 2015 audit, I would come back to the council to see whether or not you'd like us to go out to bid again or stay with the same company for another 2-3 years. This
Right.
company is new as of our 2013 audit. We went for about quite a few years with I want to say 15, 20 years with the previous auditor, which is not a good practice. You need to switch your auditors out about every 3-5 years.
Yep.
It's just, it's a good practice.
I do have a question about this one. So the city auditor in the administration is 40,000,
Mhm.
and then in finance, there's another one for 30,000. Is that the same firm?
Where are
Got
you
it.
at in finance? Let me go to.
Page 19.
Page 19. I included, there is a duplicate there. I included finance in elected appointed administration. It's the same thing.
So it's a duplicate.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's a duplicate.
It's different price.
It's internal service fund. It's a duplicate.
Okay, thank you.
Going to the next big one would probably be our technology. At the bottom of page 2, Axon Tech, you'll see Axon Tech actually listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. There's on page 3. The large amount, the $89,000, is for the maintenance of all of our city computer systems, the ones on the desks, our servers. It is possible to reduce. I wouldn't recommend eliminating it, although technically you could. We would just not have any working computers after a period of time. It could be reduced, and reducing this contract would result in basically slowing down the amount of how long it takes till an employee's computer is fixed. And that's that doesn't include purchasing the software. That's a different line item. It doesn't include purchasing hardware. That's a different line item. It doesn't include the licenses we pay for keeping our Microsoft Office suite current and keeping our financial ERP system current. It doesn't include those costs. This is just the person coming to the employees, the computers, keeping all of our servers operating and our computers and employees' desks operating. Mhm.
Quick question on that. Since there are several Axon Tech
Mhm.
contract items, is there a way to consolidate those and get a new bid for the total amount?
This is exactly where I have mentioned in the past, we would like to consolidate. You'll see we have Community Media of the Foothill, which is technology based. That's our broadcasting and the computer equipment behind us here. We have our website. We have a contract for hosting our website. We've got all this technology in different contracts. I would like to consolidate them all together, see if we could get one bid that covers everything that is less expensive than what we're currently spending. That is in the works. The first bid package we're going to send out has to do with maintaining the city's website. We're going to get that one done first,
As a part of the larger package or separate?
separate. We would like to get the city website out of the library.
We could save
and
more if we
handle-
integrated that into a larger package?
I don't know if we could try, it would hold up getting it out of the library. I'm not sure we could find somebody who could do the hardware maintenance, keep all of our software update, our broadcasting and our website. I don't know if we could find one company that would do all those varied services. We could try.
A comment about that, because also we have a big technology for our, is it Taylor?
Yes, that is our finance.
Right. So now they have some different modules that they actually help with. I don't know if and one of them is they do website management and they do permits, and they have a lot of different modules. And sometimes if you can hook on to an already existing contract, it's not as much money. And they also, I believe, provide networking experience as well. So we might want to reach out to our existing services that we have and see if they could do an integrated
We
package.
can do that. We do have the other modules that you mentioned, the one we don't, our document management module, our permitting module. It's a ERP, it's all of our resources
it's
are
all
in,
of
it's
those.
all of them, but we don't have the website through them, but we can reach out to them and ask them. That's definitely an option. They are all of our document, when you go to our website and you search for agenda reports, it's this Tyler technology that is managing that for us.
So as you're considering putting packages together and getting bids out, are most of these that we're looking at one-year contracts?
These are evergreen contracts at this point in time.
And so that's across the board in all the different areas is?
No, some contracts are 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, some are evergreen. All of our technology contracts are evergreen at this point in time.
Because we'll have to take that into consideration if we are looking into year 2, year 3, and then also if you're going to rebid, and that could change costs in certain line items for the contracts.
Correct. And all of our evergreen contracts always have an escape clause for us with, usually it's 30-day notice we can get out of the evergreens.
Who's our resident IT expert? Is it the chief? Is it?
Actually, our resident IT expert, depends.
It's Chief Giannone, right?
If it's hardware and your
Yeah.
computer's not working, or your iPhone or your
Yeah.
iPad's not working, it's Chief Giannone. If it's the website and Tyler, TMC, the Tyler Management, it's our library, it's our director,
Right.
Carolyn Thomas, and she has staff.
So we have two of our experts
Yeah.
here. Chief, to your expertise, it seems like paying $90,000 a year to have someone make sure that the computers are working. It just seems really expensive, and I know that's why we're doing the IT audit. But I really don't have any sense of how much this stuff costs, I guess.
It's been probably 12 years since I managed the City of Monterey Parks computers as part of my other duties as assigned. And back at that time, and granted they were larger scale, they paid probably 3 times as much. I know they're paying over $1 million at this point
Wow.
for their total in-house. So I think it's reasonable to go out and look for a bid and see, but I think you're going to find that you're going to probably have the cheapest that's around. I don't believe, Elaine, that we've had an increase from him for
We haven't had an
12
increase,
years, so-
and I have talked to the smaller cities we like to compare ourselves
Yep.
to, and our costs are less than theirs.
Per computer. I mean, we broke
Computer,
per
right.
computer.
I think what we have, and this is when I wish Director Snyder was still here, we literally have, I want to say hundreds of computers. There's a lot at the library, there's a lot in PD, there's a lot here, there's some at the maintenance yard. There are a lot more computers than you
Yeah.
think there would be.
I'm sure there are. Great, thanks, Chief.
And actually, based on this, they're basing it on about $100 an hour. So if you called somebody and said, hey, my computer's
Yeah.
broken, come out,
Probably more than that.
$100 an hour is not that bad.
Not that bad.
Right, it is $100 an hour, very good. Yep.
So they do, and that Exxon Tech does the networking too.
Yes.
So he does all of the CQL maintenance
Mm-hmm.
and does all the updates and all of that kind of stuff.
Our off-site storage is through the
And does
company,
he,
everything.
do we have a person on site like once a week?
We have a person on site at City Hall, Police Department, and Library all day Monday and all day Thursday for 8 hours each day.
So that.
Minimum, and then he comes back in when if we have an emergency.
Right.
And there's a critical system down and it's a Wednesday, he'll come back on a Wednesday.
Okay.
Great.
The next big one, Community Media of the Foothills is $30,000. That is for the broadcasting of our Planning Commission and our council meetings. It is technically possible to eliminate this contract. I would not recommend it, because that would mean people could not watch this if they're Time Warner customers and they tune to our cable channel. I think that would, it can be, there is no legal requirement to televise council meetings, but it's a very good practice. The next big one, the Axon Tech for $18,000. That's the licensing of the office software for all of our computers. It is possible to eliminate this, and I can say this is something that the city did not do when I first got here. We didn't keep our Microsoft Office current. New versions came out, and as computers died and we brought on new computers, you would have one computer running on Office 2003 and another running on Office 2013. And we got to the point where we couldn't even share documents anymore. So we decided we need to keep our licenses current with the current version. But it is technically possible to go back to the way things were. The thing about this is I did learn, if we eliminated this, it looks like a lot of money, $18,000, but if we were to eliminate it, Microsoft used to allow you to just pay for the upgrade. We would basically have to be buying it all over the entire software, and it would be 3 times as much if we stopped it and started to do it again in the future.
I would not recommend not doing updates. Because now, not only is because they get you coming and going. So Microsoft now also ties into a lot of the Internet Explorer and our browsers. And then if you don't, sometimes if you're running a web-based program, if you don't have the correct browser, which communicates with your software, it won't run. And so it's best to keep everything up and running and that we need to do.
And those are I sort of picked the ones that were, above $20,000 range. If there's any other ones on the list remaining here that you have questions on page 4, I'd be glad to answer. If not, we
I
can
have
go.
a quick question. We pay for Xerox and Ricoh,
Mhm.
which is, it's like buying Pepsi and Coke. Is there a reason why we just don't consolidate into one of them?
The Ricoh is a color copier, the Xerox isn't. It's actually cheaper to have them split up this way. We actually, believe it or not, do a lot of copying. One copier would slow our workflow. We would start forming a queue behind the one copier. This is something that one of them can be reduced. I would recommend getting rid of the smaller
Oh, no, I
copier
wouldn't
in
get rid of
there.
it. I know how competitive this industry is. You get Xerox and Ricoh calling, or the equivalent, calling every company on a daily basis, oh, we can save you money. So it's just interesting that one of them, because they service these too, right?
Mhm.
So it's just funny to me that one of these companies wouldn't have tried to move in and say, we'll do it all for you, and
We do, and I have to tell you that Laura does an excellent job of wheeling and dealing with these contracts. We just entered into a new one. I want to say it's for the Ricoh that is less than this. I should have brought the new number. It's probably in the $12,000 range, because this is what's in the budget right now. We just did renegotiate this price lower. I believe it was the Ricoh. So when we do our updates, I would be adjusting that number. But it is something that we monitor and they do.
Yeah.
We play them against each other. It's just they both do completely different things for us.
got it.
The color copier is actually the more expensive one. The Ricoh is the black, it's our workhorse. City Clerk applied it turns out copies amazingly quickly.
And does this do a lot of your printing too? Do people print to it?
People print to it.
Okay.
It's cheaper to print to this printer than your little desktop
Right.
printer. So if anyone has a large document, they print to the Ricoh,
Okay.
because it is less expensive in the long run with the supplies, the toner. And everything is networked, so everyone can print to the big copier. We can go, the fire chief is here. We can move to page 6, fire and paramedic. And Chief Heidorf, if you can just concentrate on the ones that are above the $15,000 range. Unless the council has a question on any of the other ones.
Well, maybe these we can just ask questions.
Okay.
If we do, Does any of these jumped out? I mean, none of them to me seemed, I didn't have any questions about any of them, so.
I mean, I know we need the services from City of Glendale, but it's just such a large figure. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about the dispatch services that we use with them.
Well, they do our 911. 911 comes into Sierra Madre, and then they dispatch over to Verdugo or Glendale, and then they dispatch us. And then, like right now, we're having Schaefer come in. They dispatch Schaefer for our ambulance to come in right now. If we need any help, they have the frequencies, and they get a hold of all of our neighbors to come in and help with us. And they're also right now they're doing tiered dispatching for us, which means they can they'll decide whether it's BLS or ALS on, so what kind of equipment to send. And they also, they're EMTDs, so they're EMT
So many
dispatchers.
acronyms.
And as for comparison, this obviously needs to be a 24, assuming we wanted to be an island unto ourselves and not have the availability of Verdugo being able to send in Pasadena or Arcadia or somebody if we have a big fire. To staff a 24-hour operation is a minimum of 3 employees. So 3 employees with a, totally burdened cost is going to be 3 times the $62,000 is another way to look at it.
And so the 62,000 is pretty much a flat rate, if you want to call it, for the entire year?
Right, it's actually, it ends up being a per call, and right now it's
It
about
is per call.
$68 per call, which it had come down. It came down 4% from last year. And we're now paying, everybody in Verdugo is paying the same rate. So they brought some up, they brought us down, so that we're paying the same rate as Pasadena, Glendale, even though they have, 10 times as many calls as us, so.
So the 62,000 is budgeted based on historic trends? And of course
Right,
the 4%?
it's historic trends, and then they'll, this year's, what we're paying for this year is what we used last year. And so, that's the way the contract, and so you'll see that go up and down a little by the number of calls we have.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's any other questions, Chief. Thank you.
Next up is Community Services, who, other purchase supplies is a typo. It's not 23,000, it's 2,300. Just, it's $2,300, so that's a minor amount.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 8, page 8. We're on page 8. The largest one there is the printing of the wisteria vine at $10,200. We print hard copies, as you're aware, of our newsletter 3 times a year, and it's mailed out to all of our residents. That is obviously something that we could eliminate from the budget, and either have the information on our website electronically, but that is one that could be reduced, should the council desire.
City manager, is that just the printing? It doesn't include the postage?
I would need to defer to,
Right above.
the postage is a line item above for 3,000.
Is that 3,000 per mailing or total?
That's for the fiscal year.
So for the whole year, so for
the
the
whole
three times?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. So the total would be 13,290, postage and printing. And I believe there is this is just the general fund. I believe there's some additional costs. We didn't bring the water fund to you, but I believe there's some in the water fund, Adam.
For,
The wisteria vine, do we still spread it out between different funds? Is it all 100% general fund?
currently, right now, it's all general fund.
Okay.
We don't
Okay,
do it for the water insert.
okay, so it's all general fund. There aren't any additional costs.
So if we do end up contracting with YMCA or YWCA, what else do we include in the wisteria vine besides the classes? I forget.
We have classes. We have some usually general city information if there's issues like water conservation, things of that nature. We have our contract classes, our special events, and it usually will also include information for the Y and Waterworks Aquatics.
And does Waterworks send anything out on their own?
They do. They have their own separate website where they do their own marketing, but to supplement that, we utilize our resources as well. So, city's Facebook page, city's website, and the Wisteria Vine.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just also, there's labor involved in putting this together.
yes, there
And
is.
that would be saved too,
Mm-hmm.
because then you're just updating new information on the website rather than compiling. So,
An estimate,
Mm.
you think, of how much time you spend doing
For staff hours per edition, I would estimate maybe 30 to 40 hours per edition to compile all the information, lay it out, and then get it sent out to printers.
and that's in your department.
Correct.
It's actually is Adam.
It is Adam.
Yeah, we
so-
don't, that's not part of the service.
Okay, well, I think this is something to think about, because those 30-hour, you do it 3 times a year,
times
so
a
that's
year.
90 hours. That's hours you could spend on coordinating some other activities that may have more benefit, so
Right.
something to think about.
If there's nothing further on community services, we can go to the police department, which has
Adam?
page 9, 10, 11, and 12.
I'll go ahead and start on page 10. The first large item, Executive Information Services, EIS, that's our computer system, and as you know from last night's council meeting, you approved the new system to come in with the upgrade. So I expect that this figure, at least for a year or so, may go away, because we won't need the required maintenance that we have in the past, and there's going to be warranty on the new system. So I think this is going to be flexible. I'm not going to say it's going to go away totally, but I think it could be significantly reduced because of the new system that you approved last evening. Down at the bottom, the Pasadena Humane Society. We are currently in our last year of the contract with Pasadena Humane. Their contract expires the end of the fiscal year next year. We typically get some cost of a COLA raise with them, about 2%, I believe, or 3% each year, depending on what it is. And that is a contract that we could seek out from other agencies. LA County provides services in this area, so does the San Gabriel Humane Society. We've historically had a long-term contract with Pasadena Humane, and we can also go into negotiations with them to determine if in fact we want to try to reduce services that they provide. And that would be the same with the other companies.
Question?
Sir?
Are we receiving revenue? I mean, I thought that after,
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, so
We
how
do
much?
receive a certain amount of revenue for dog licensing, but I don't have that information on what we are getting from the license.
Okay, because it was based on the number of licenses, wasn't it? And my impression from looking at this 2 years ago is that we were woefully
Most people don't
low.
license their dogs.
Yeah. And have they been successful in raising that number? Because again, I mean, for the people just knocking on doors in the last, I
See
mean,
a
when I
lot
was
of
doing it,
dogs.
it's like everybody had a dog, and then we looked and we only had like
850,
1,500,
yeah,
something
lower than that.
ridiculous,
You
yeah.
know, the number of licenses has increased. I can bring some information, just email you the information on that.
Yeah.
Our numbers have significantly increased in number of dog licenses. We do get a reduction on our bill.
Yeah.
After a certain dollar amount on licenses, there's a cost sharing
Well,
that offsets
yeah.
our bill.
And that was my impression, that when we went to this, that it was going to save money as opposed to having it internal, so.
And that stays on the finance side of the house. I just get what my budget
Right,
is to
right.
pay them, so.
Yeah, yeah.
On the, let's see, the next page, on page 11, you have a $20,000 amount that is off for professional services. This is primarily for background investigations, psychological exams, and things relating to the hiring of police officer personnel. That amount fluctuates. We did have that amount in because we expected that we'd be doing some hiring this year. And that amount also is paid for those people that don't pass backgrounds. Your typical background investigation runs anywhere from $1,500 to $1,600. We've been fortunate we haven't had to pay more to have a background investigator travel out of state or anything of that nature. But we have a significant amount of people that unfortunately fail in the background, and we still have to pay for that investigation. Under the current vendor, I do have an agreement with him, though, that he gets about halfway in an investigation and he calls me and says, this is what I have, do you want to go further? And that's been trimming it down to $700, $800, kind of a halfway point to keep us in. So this amount fluctuates, but that's what was budgeted for this year for the amount of personnel that we are probably going to hire.
Chief, with the skill set necessary to accomplish this, is that Do we have that in our current, with our officers right now?
No,
Could
we
that be
don't.
done?
That takes specialized training. That would be a full-time position, quite honestly, right now. And that's all I have on over 15,000, I believe. Happy to answer any other questions.
I do have another question. At one of the town hall meetings, I heard you say that we don't get the full amount on a ticket.
That's correct.
So where does all that other money go?
The county and the state.
So about how much do we get per ticket?
If we're lucky, $11.
And that's like on a $300 ticket?
Yeah, probably $11 to $14 on these days.
Why do they get so much?
I don't know. I don't either.
County and state law.
Yeah,
It's good to be them, huh?
I guess, yes.
that's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, chief.
Next up is the library.
Hello, so you want,
Let's see, any questions, any specific questions for the director, or, because you don't have a ton of items that are extremely expensive, so.
in the $2,000 and $3,000 range
Right,
mostly?
Exactly.
The big one is the innovative interfaces. That's our ILS system, which supports all of the patron and book records and circulation materials. This is the annual maintenance fee, and the thing to note here is that this is a system that was purchased in 2002. And the software, I talked with the vendor last week, it will no longer be supported or maintained. He's giving it a year, maybe a year and a half, and it's a big ticket item to buy.
How big?
Huge. It was purchased in 2002 for $163,000 by the Friends. The Friends paid for it. And previously, it was in 1998. It was a 4-year gap before the technology changed, and it was in a technology grant, and it was in the $100,000 range. So now I'm looking at 3 alternatives. One is open source, again, not free, and those tend to be hosted through consortiums, if you will. So a variety of different libraries get together and purchase some software and maintain it themselves, so it's staff intensive, but that can still be to get going with it can range from $20,000 to $60,000, and then the annual maintenance would be more $10,000 to $20,000 per year. And then we're even reviewing different ILS systems, which range in price from $10,000 on up. So it is expensive.
To have staff do the software themselves would require a pretty significant learning curve, I'm guessing, too, if it's
Yes.
a new system.
Yes. If, for example, if we were to go to Koha or Evergreen or even Sierra, we would need somebody to help us migrate. And the other thing
That
is.
was going to be my question. Innovative interfaces, do we know if they do migrate to another service?
They do.
Or we do have limitations on what we can,
No, we're wide open.
okay,
When this crashes, so to speak, we've hoped to get before it crashes.
right.
There's a couple of components with it, because we host all of this in the library in that server closet in the basement. We have our own 4 servers that we personally maintain and upgrade and take care of and host all of the records. But I would look towards hosting this offsite, and there's a cost associated with that. So it's staff or, I guess, the benefit of having it hosted offsite.
And
So
can
it
you
is
explain the
expensive.
advantage of putting it off-site?
Hosting it offsite, you mean? Well, an example is one company I just talked to with today. Their hosts, they host it in a cloud. It's a warehouse in Phoenix,
Okay,
and so all the servers are located there, and so you connect to them.
so the advantage would be if something happened to the library building itself, all the records would still be stored somewhere else that we could retrieve.
That's correct. And to your point, Today, we do backup tapes every week and store them in the safe at City Hall.
Okay.
So we do have a security system in place. But it is an expensive thing, and this is the 25,000 is the minimum.
So Director, the biggest ticket item then is the books and references with the 45,000?
Yes.
Okay. And is that similar to the amount you had last year?
We were budgeted, that's the amount that we expended.
Expended.
So, and it's the amount that we expended for the past 2 years, so I felt that was something that we could reach and not suffer too much from. The citizens would not suffer from that. And if we had to get some extra funding, we have the opportunity to go to the Friends Group. For example, if we wanted a certain set and it cost $5,000 for children's encyclopedia set or whatever, we might be able to go to the Friends Group and ask them to support that one purchase.
Thank you.
I have a question. Director Thomas, there's a couple here that says, 3 in a row that says this contract could be eliminated and
Yes.
no service impact. Can you talk a little bit about those, especially the last one with innovative interfaces? If their software is going to become obsolete, why would we be getting involved
Okay.
deeper with
Yeah,
them?
this was put in the budget when we did the 2-year budget, and these were services that we anticipated receiving, but we never implemented them. And this particular one was to have automatic invoicing, and so we never implemented it. So if we didn't go through with it, it's okay. And the same with the Collection HQ.
Yeah,
Does an analysis of the collection. So they never were implemented, we never expended those funds.
yeah.
We have a policy, a pretty firm policy, that if it, isn't necessary, realizing when this budget was prepared more than 2 years ago. And so at that time was our best estimate of what we were going to need. But if we end up in any of these line items, we don't need it, we don't spend the money. And when we come back to do the mid-year budget, that's when these line items would be reduced.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, also on periodicals, it says that it could be shifted to a friend's budget request, but, I mean, periodicals are something that are used widely, aren't they?
Yes.
So why would you pick that out to say that could be shifted? I mean, if you could shift that, you could shift anything, couldn't you?
Not necessarily. The Friends pick and choose what they want to fund.
Uh-huh.
And I have talked with the Friends president about some things that the Friends might support funding. And the periodical budget would be one of them. So
Yeah.
for example, we submit a request for $55,000 annually to the Friends for a number of items, and their board votes on it, on what
Yeah.
they're going to support.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that we could add to that budget in a future year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Director Thomas?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Moving to page 19, the Finance Department, the only large one remaining now is the recently approved contract for interim finance director services. Again, if we were to hire a new director sooner, this is the most we think we'd spend. The sooner we get someone on, the sooner that expense is minimized.
And again, I just have a question. We have Tyler Technologies for 2,700 for online component to the Tyler financial software.
Yes.
Is that the same as the one that we had in administration for 4,950, or is that in addition
No,
to?
this is in addition to. This is not a duplicate.
Okay. And why do we have two?
This is for, there's different online payments. This one is for, let me go back to the other one. Where was the other one?
It was under administration. It was part of you have a $70,000 annual service fee, and then on top of that, you had a 4,950 online component for usage and service for the maintenance, web maintenance. So I was just wondering what the two difference are. It's not a lot of money, but
Which one? I'm trying to find the one on page, is it page 4?
it's page 4, Tyler Technology. There's two in there. You have 4,950 for online component,
Right,
and then you have 70,000 for the annual service.
right. This is
Okay.
different. This one over here in finance is just for the online water bill payment component only.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next would be human, if there's if there isn't anything else in finance, we can go to human resources on page 20. This is City Manager Cox.
Our two big ones are Liebert Cassidy Whitmore. As City Manager Aguilar stated earlier, this is one of our specialty law firms. We actually have what we call a reverse retainer with Liebert and Cassidy Whitmore, which means once our bills get over $30,000, we get a 20% discount on any additional fees over that. We do go through time periods where our monthly bills are that higher. Fortunately, the beginning of this fiscal year, we are not in those numbers, but we do potentially have negotiations coming up with the Police Association in the second part of the fiscal year. We do have some litigation and some discipline hearings that are in their final stages. So we may at mid-year be able to reduce this number based off of the beginning part of the year, but I don't want to be overly optimistic and then need to go back and ask for the money back. The other one that we have is the JPIA, which is the 1.1 million. We've been over that a couple of times, but essentially that is our liability and our workers' comp risk pool. We are paying back on our retrospective from when we joined the JPIA through 2010 when they started moving to the prospective model. This number does include our annual payments plus the retrospective payments going backwards.
And again, just to refresh our memories, when will the retrospective be paid off?
Never. In some ways it is a never because the retrospective changes every single year based off of all of the claims throughout the entire pool. So it'll be paid off when every single claim in the pool for that time period is done, which could be a number of years out. But our largest portion, where we're making the 6-year annual payment, will probably be done in 3 to 4 years, depending if we're able to continue to proactively pay it down. But there will still be numbers that'll come up every year afterwards. It just won't be that large.
Sure, so what percentage of that 1.1 million is retrospective?
At least 50%.
And so that'll drop significantly, so this should be on a decreased expense as we go into the future.
Yes, we are working hard to pay off that large part of the retrospective before in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Liberty Cassidy and Whitmore, I believe, came before us a year and a half ago, asking for a raise,
That's right.
and we said no.
No.
Was it them?
No, they haven't asked
Well,
for
it was a
raise.
law
You know what it was DePere and Rosen.
Yeah.
It was code enforcement, and we
That's
said
right.
no,
We
and
said
so
no.
they didn't.
So Liberty Cassidy has not asked for an increase?
They do them few and far between. There has been one since I've been director, but it hasn't been recent. We do an hourly billing with them instead of the normal retainer, but then again, we have that reverse retainer when things get heavy.
Great. Thank you.
Next is planning services.
There's DePere.
Our last meeting for Director Castro.
Pulled a fast one. We thought yesterday was the last one.
Do you have any questions in particular, or would you like?
I would
summary?
definitely go over the Wildan one, the large ones, Dan. Anything that's large in your case, yours are all large.
Yeah, they are. So, Wildan, we had a contract awarded to Wildan in January of 2013, and it's for building plan check and inspection services, public counter assistance, and information. What the Wildan contract gives us is a building inspector full-time and a building official. It's part-time. He comes a couple of days a week for any final sign-off of plans and for building official, what's required for a building official to review and approve. The contract is based on a percentage of fees basis. What this does is ensure full cost recovery of the services or for the services. For example, the building permit is at a 70-30 split, building permit fee. If a building permit fee costs $1,000, they receive 700, we receive 300. That 700 pays for their services for building, and then the 300 is to cover our administrative costs for processing the application. It's, we have our administrative assistant and as well as planners who do plan check as part of that process, so it covers for that. The thing with a percentage of fees is that it accounts for fluctuation of, in the building activity. If service is really low, again, it ensures full cost recovery, and if service is high, again, that doesn't change in terms of the percentage of fees. The services cannot be eliminated because it's required to meet California building codes and to meet health and safety construction requirements. Any kind of reduction would result in longer times to take, because it would probably reduce the time to part-time services, and so that would take longer to review plan checks, for inspections to be conducted. Any kind of elimination, or if we were to bid for a new contractor with a different contract cost, that is possible. However, it could disrupt current workflow as we have now. We presented an analysis prior to the contract for Wildan, whether to have an in-house building official or to contract with Wildan, and the analysis determined that in the long term it was better to have a contract because we allowed the greater flexibility and availability of other building and safety services should we need it at a reduced rate. The Hong Tam, he has been with the city for over 20 years as the structural plan check services. He is also at a percentage of fees basis, so his costs will never exceed the revenue taken in for the service, and it ensures full cost recovery as well. This cannot be eliminated as well because it's an important component of the plan check process. And if it were to be reduced, again, just probably a slowdown in the productivity. De Pere, Rosenblit, and Litvak.
Wait, yeah.
Go on with that one. Hong Tam does just the residential services, right?
Just the residential, yes. And then
Okay.
Wildan would do the commercial.
Yeah, now, I mean, that is a possibility. I brought that up before, that we could roll Hong Tam's work into Wildan. But Hong Tam apparently has a really good relationship with, the builders and the residents in town, and I think we get my understanding is a lot of customer satisfaction that we might lose, but that is something that perhaps could be saved, but I don't know how much. I mean,
The difference is the percentage of fees. It's 70-30 for Wildan, and I believe Hong Tam's isn't a 70-30. The
Yeah.
city gets a little bit less.
75-25
Yeah,
for Hong
Yeah.
Tam. Now,
small difference.
it could be
So-
revisited.
yeah, could be.
I don't know if you want to, I can move, I'm going to move on.
Yeah, move on, I'm sorry, yeah.
No, that's fine. De Pere, Rosenblit, and Litvak is one of our, is our one prosecuting attorney or code enforcement legal representation. This is an amount that we maintain, should we need to draw from to deal with code enforcement legal work. It can be reduced or even eliminated. The consequence of that would be that we would not have representation to seek abatement or compliance with any kind of illegal construction activity or public nuisance. It just doesn't have the teeth to enforce any compliance.
Yeah, if I can just comment on that, I mean, that always comes before the council in closed session. So we always have the opportunity to not pursue enforcement of any particular action. So, I mean, we can do that if we thought that was the right thing to do. But since I've been here, I mean, generally we've had in every case consensus that, you know, we need to move forward with what's been presented to us.
And I have to say too that, you know, again, the aim with code compliance is for voluntary compliance. We're
Yeah.
not seeking to have an attorney representation. That's sort of the last
That's a last resort.
Yeah.
last resort. But, you know, we seek it if we need it.
And have we been spending, I mean, the $125,000 a year, it's a pretty big number. I know for the past couple of years, one project in particular we've spent that much on that one. So, you know, going forward, when that one thing gets resolved, I mean, do we
It's
think
based,
that?
it's based on historical average. It could go down a bit, but it would still be a $100,000 line item.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is it, Madam City Attorney, is that something your firm could do?
Yes, we could do it, but it would fall under that 100, or, it would fall under litigation services.
True, but I
Yeah.
mean, at least we wouldn't have the expense of the retainer with the current, is that right, with the current firm, the 125?
There is no retainer. This
Hourly.
DePere Rosen is entirely hourly. There is no retainer for
Well, I
DePere
misunderstood
Rosenbluth.
what you said then. I mean, once we get this one big one settled, you're saying it still would be 125,000 or?
No, I said it will be less.
Uh-huh.
It will be less. It will probably still be approximately a $100,000 line item, so that the funds are there should we need them. We could zero this line item out and just come to the council requesting money as things come up. That's the other way to do it.
Oh,
Either we
I
have
see
money
what you're
sitting in there
saying.
for just
You're-
in case.
you're
or we
budgeting.
come
This
case
is-
per case.
Okay,
And
I got
request
it.
an appropriation.
I thought it.
And
yeah.
the city attorney will tell you, you generally don't want, it's something you generally don't, what a active litigation costs. So it's better to budget for it.
No,
And
I
if we don't need
understand.
it, we don't spend it.
I just misunderstood. I thought whether we use it or not, we're paying
Oh,
that.
no.
It's just a budget item.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
I just have a general question, Madam City Manager. If, let's say for a line item like that, it's at 100,000, do we have a threshold as to when staff need to come back to City Council to say we need additional dollars?
Yes. We do if an item is budgeted, staff's authority, if it's budgeted, is $25,000. So anything above that. But all litigation matters, even if we think it's a $2,000 expense to litigate something, all litigation matters are approved by the council.
Okay, and then otherwise it's $25,000.
And
You
it
have the
has to be
authority under
budgeted.
$25,000.
Right. And it has to be budgeted.
Okay.
But all litigation has to be approved by the council, whether we're initiating it or we're responding to it.
And no matter what the line item is, $1,000, they can go up to $25,000 without City Council approval.
Well, the city council approves it when you approve the budget.
Right, but I'm saying if the line item is at $1,000, for example, city staff have the authority up to $25,000 over that line item.
No. We have authority on the line item. So if there's a $1,000 line item, we would have authority up to the $1,000 in the line item. There's some flexibility of another line item. Let's use office supplies. Let's say for citywide office supplies, there's a $20,000 line item. And then there's another line item for, trying to think of something else, for example. Another item, that office supplies is gonna go over. I have the authority to move money within the same fund as long as, in the same department, as long as I don't exceed what's been allocated for that department in that fund.
Okay. Okay, so it's by
So because
department.
1,000, sometimes something's 1,500, but another item was 3,000, we're only gonna spend 1,000, and it's justified, I have the authority to move between line, but I can't exceed the bottom line total for the fund for that budget.
Period. What was the
Period.
25,000 then you were referring to earlier?
According to the municipal code, I can enter into contracts that are budgeted
Contracts.
up to
budget.
$25,000.
Okay, great, thank you.
But they have to be budgeted and approved, the council approves the budget. When you approve the budget, you're approving that $25,000 expenditure.
Director Castro, when does the Windan contract expire?
It's a 3-year term. It would be January 2016.
And I understand the reason for contracting those services out, and reading your analysis. How many times since we've had them, have we had to use their other services, would you say?
Regularly.
We do, Specific water efficient landscape requirements.
Traffic engineering,
Traffic engineering, yes. I think some flood, when it comes to site
hydrology.
hydrology and
Is
engineering.
it possible just to kind of get a tally of what those costs are? Because, you know, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to say we want to get rid of this contract, but we seem to give up a lot of revenue for this, to have the contract. You know, if we had an in-person doing it, we would keep all the money from the building permits, correct?
But we would be spending money for the staff
Right.
and these extra, we'd still need the hydrologist, we'd still need the landscape
I know,
architect.
that's why I'm
so
asking
we
if
would
we
be spending
could
money.
just have,
Mhm.
you know,
And-
what those costs
I
were.
should say too, like, for example, specifically water efficient landscaping, those are fees that are charged to the applicant.
And they
So
pay
that's a
for
full cost recovery of additional services that are necessary to review their plans. We're not eating those costs. The applicant is, or the developer, or whoever.
Okay.
So Director Castro, is it safe to say that this contract is saving us money over if we had to do it in-house?
I would say so because what we're ensuring is that, you know, we happen to have high building activity right now, so the cost we would never exceed the cost for the service because we're always receiving a revenue, and that is to cover for administrative costs to support building and safety services. Even in low times, if 1 month you know, there's a lot less activity, you know, it fluctuates, and we have that ability to do that. With one building official, for an in-house, for example, that person could be sick, that person could go on vacation. We still need substitute inspection, and Wildan provided that a number of years prior to them having the contract. So we always had to pay for a contract service to be at hand should our own building official is not available, and for other specialized services that Wildan is available to provide. So, and again, you know, per the analysis too, with an in-house, we just found through the recent experience of having a building official that because of our rate of scale for the salary, we just weren't attracting those that had the credentials necessary to stay with us. And when we did, it was a condition of approval, condition of the job, but after the 18 months, they were ready to
Wait.
go.
And then we don't have that person in the department to do other things, right? So we do have someone who's here to serve the public,
We have
but,
a full-time building inspector.
right. And did we take that into account with like your staffing? Because I know that we had
No,
a
they're not
reduction.
included in the FTE counts.
Right. So originally, we used to have someone in the planning, we used to have a person in-house do this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then, but we don't have that person anymore.
Correct, so they
right?
lost that FTE. Mm-hmm.
But they lost the FT, but they.
But it came back in as a contract.
Okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess my caution about contracting all the time is, it looks really good on paper, but you're slowly reducing people that are here to do other things, you know, for the department. And this sounds like a good thing, but I think you always need to take that into consideration when you're contracting out a service. It reflects in your FTEs that you're losing somebody, but somebody's actually doing the work, but they're not here all the time. It's not somebody that we can promote through the city as well. That's the only thing. I caution everybody, we don't want to contract out everything, because then eventually we don't have people here in the city hall to take care of business, which happened. That's why we had to close.
I think we all agree.
Yeah.
We don't want to contract.
Yeah.
Everything.
So, you know, one of the reasons we had a problem with opening City Hall was we didn't have people here in the building to do the work. That's because we've contracted those people out. It's not, you know, so if that makes sense at all.
To a degree.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I mean, we can argue it, we already did when we
Yeah.
approved it, you know.
And this is fine, I would like to know how
We should be
the other
aware of.
services that we've, you know, the discount. I don't want to have a contract just because we get a discount. I don't know if that saves money all the time. That's what I'm asking.
Any other questions for Director Castro? If not, we can move on to Public Works. Thank you, Danny.
Public Works is another one, page 25, 26, 27, there's a lot of contracts. 28, 29, and 30.
Again, I would focus on,
Good evening.
hi, Director Inman. Any questions for Director Inman? I mean, there's a lot of contracts here.
We start with the large one, Merchants
Yeah,
Landscape Roofs.
if I might, our single largest contract is with Merchants Landscape Services. The total of that contract is just under $119,000. When we went out to bid for these services in roughly 2005, we were able to eliminate 3 FTEs from general fund in favor of this contract work. And when we put together our bid document, we broke it down into the various sections of town where these services would be provided, which allows us to very accurately assign costs to all the different funds that I've shown in this chart. So granted, some of these breakdowns that I've given you are not general fund or internal services, but I wanted you just to see how we've spread that $118,000 over a number of different revenue sources. That first number, the $71,000, is for the maintenance of the parks. It includes irrigation repairs, cleaning the restrooms, emptying the trash cans, all of that. We wouldn't recommend reducing this amount because to do so is going to reduce the frequency of the services that are being provided. For example, restrooms are cleaned daily. If you reduce that contract amount, you might see them reduced, the frequency of restroom cleaning reduced, or we would have to backfill those services with our existing staff. There's one small amount there of $2,100 roughly. It's a general fund storm drain item. That's landscape maintenance at a debris basin. And on page 26 at the bottom, another small item, the landscaping around our city facilities for $13,500, which will show up later in this document under internal services for facilities. So that is essentially Merchants Landscape. Again, we were able to save about $120,000 at the time that we went out to contract on this over what we were spending for in-house staff to do the work. Moving on, another large item, if you look at the total, is for City Engineer Kev Charkoudian. We have him on a $9,600 a year retainer for general engineering services and assessment district work. The larger amount there, we estimated for this year, his services for plan checking would be roughly $15,000. But with the increase in building development, we've actually seen year-to-date revenue of $47,000, and that, again, is offsetting revenue that is more than covering what we're paying Kev. The $53,000 item just below that on page 27 is contract work. That will be for installation of inserts in catch basins. That has to be done under the current NPDES permit to meet the requirements of the trash TMDL. That is an annual cost for this year and the next several years. And essentially what we've done is taken an overall cost and just spread it over several years to get that amount.
Director Inman?
Yes, sir.
That's something you could do internally if you had the bodies to do it?
I don't think we have the bodies to do it. And one of the things we need to do is identify the specific catch basin inserts that the county will approve, because we also have to install these in the county-owned catch basins. This isn't limited to just the catch basins that the city owns. We have to install these in county catch basins as well. We have to go through the county's whole very arduous permitting process to do this, and it's best that we contract this work out with somebody that does this work all the time.
So we don't have we don't have these inserts now, right?
No, we don't. We have a few in the downtown, but they're not of the approved fashion. When we first got the trash DMDL, we jumped on this and started putting the inserts in, then we found, well, no, those aren't approved.
Okay.
So-
And so when you talk about the current one, the current permit, that's the one that's existing, that's not the new one that's coming into play in a couple years that we need the 450?
This is existing.
This is the existing one, okay.
Below that is roughly $28,000. That is for,
Well, sorry, Director
sorry.
Inman, just to clarify though, I think Councilman Del Mar was referring to the current stormwater permit though, that is making us insert, these catch basin inserts are for the MS4 permit, correct?
yes, these are actually for the prior.
For the prior one?
For permit.
Ah,
This is a continuation of the prior, just, we have a new permit, yes, but the old one didn't go away, and we still have to put these inserts in under the
Got
old
it.
permit.
and that new number is gonna be, and we're talking about it later, but 450,000 or something like that, okay.
28,500 is for catch basin cleaning. We estimated this based on an assumption that it might rain. And normally we spend for dry weather roughly $3,500 for catch basin cleaning. When we start getting into wet weather cleaning, that cost goes up considerably. We may see some variation in that once we see the catch basin inserts installed, because again, what we're cleaning out of the catch basins is the trash that the inserts are designed to collect. But we are going to have to clean the inserts out as well. So this is a number that may fluctuate over time as we see how the inserts function.
Director Inman?
Yes.
Are the inserts cleaned out using by hand or using some kind of apparatus, or how's that done?
We're planning on cleaning them out largely with our Vector truck that we've used for years for sewer cleaning, and that mechanical apparatus should work very well, but there will be some handwork that's involved, and if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to get down into the catch basins physically, we are not equipped or trained for confined space entry, so that would be something that we would have to contract out for, or we would have to equip ourselves and get trained for. Moving on to page 28, there's a $41,000 expense there, combined with a $14,000 expense, getting us to roughly $55,000. That is for the current enhanced watershed management plan that analyst Carlson has been working so diligently on, and he can certainly answer more questions about that if you have them. Those are costs that we really can't either avoid, reduce, or eliminate at this point. These are costs that we've already agreed to with those other cities that are part of the group.
Director Emmons, so you have the note here that originally it was 24,720 in July, and now we've gone up to 55. Can you just explain why it's gone up so much?
Yeah, I would have to defer that to James because he's been working more closely with the group and with those numbers.
And it's the council's pleasure. I can jump into this right now, or I was anticipating being able to give an overall NPDS explanation.
Which would you prefer? Would you prefer just to wait?
I think it would be a little bit clearer for the council if I could just do it separately.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine.
But as soon as Public Works might be done, I was just looking at the organization of the staff report and going through contracts, and then
That's
I would
fine.
get into my.
Yeah, we can.
So we'll hear from you soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll be back.
There's no getting away, James.
Can I just ask a general question, though? Can you just share with me, so all of those items are all general fund items, these last, whatever, five items?
Yes, anything related to storm drain,
Is general
as
fund.
City Manager Aguilar indicated up front, in the past, we have covered these costs under our sewer fund. Those have been backed out of the sewer fund now, and the only place we have to put them, quite frankly, is the general fund. There are no other funding sources that we have to cover this.
Okay, thank you.
Moving down the page at the bottom of 28 is the contract with United Maintenance Services. That is the janitorial service for all city facilities, with the exception of the park restrooms. This service did replace one full-time employee back again around 2005-06 when we went to the contract maintenance program. Again, we don't recommend reducing this amount or this contract simply because we'll either reduce the quality of our facility maintenance, or we'll have to backfill those services with our own in-house staff. And let's see, that
Concludes
pretty
it.
well
Quick question
covers
on
all
that.
the large ones.
Can you give us just a thumbnail sketch of the kinds of services we're talking about that they're providing in terms of maintenance?
Oh, it's basically
Just emptying trash
janitorial
cans
stuff.
or-
It's
Dusting,
the carpet
em-
cleaning,
carpet
dusting, vacuuming,
emptying trash.
emptying the trash, anything that you might consider for
Washing windows.
janitorial work. Yeah, the washing windows, all of that stuff.
Anything particularly technical in nature?
No, it's not.
The routine?
It's not technical. It's routine. It's done. For example, in City Hall, it's done every weeknight. Police station, it's done every night. It varies for each facility depending on the facility uses.
Thank you, Director Inman.
Okay.
I just have a general question about why this was taken out of the sewer funds and put into the general plan funds. What was the rationale behind that?
The rationale was that we were doing the water rate and sewer rate study. The first study that came out had some there was a large water rate increase and a large sewer rate increase. So to minimize the sewer rate increase, it was pulled over. It was pulled out of the general fund.
But, and more specifically, it was pulled out because there has to be, and there's a term of art here, a nexus to be able to put your costs within a sewer rate or a water rate study. And we thought that the nexus, which other cities and agencies were using to say that the stormwater drains were somehow leading to higher sewer costs and maintenance for years down the road, we just thought it was questionable. And the council debated it for a long time and thought that the nexus just wasn't really there. And, I don't know exactly whether this has been ironed out by a lot of other cities or agencies because, for example, the sanitation district is talking about this exact same issue right now. And I'm not quite sure if there's a consensus. So we erred on the side of being, I guess, more transparent that we would just pay for this through the general fund rather than, in a way, bearing it in our sewer rate increase. So.
I'd put it a little more simply, is that we felt it was the right thing to do.
Well, the thing is, it's hard because it wasn't really, I didn't find it to be, it wasn't that simple though, right? I mean, because a lot of other cities are doing this. I mean, a lot of other cities are putting in their sewer rate.
That trend is changing based on advice from city attorneys in all the cities. The trend is reversing.
And they're doing what we're doing.
They're doing what
Yeah.
we're doing.
So it sounds like it started off that way as a matter of convenience because it was easy to just raise the sewer rates to accommodate this increasing
And
expense.
it was all underground, infrastructure, somewhat kind of related, two separate systems, but, and as time goes on, as Prop 218 and other laws and various, lawsuits in other cities kind of clarified over time, give us direction. Things change. What is okay 20 years ago, as time goes on, based on decisions, it's no longer the recommended way to do it.
And I just bring it up because I think that's one of the reasons, in addition to a lot of other things, that the general fund kind of took that hit. I mean, it's now burdened with a large amount of money that we didn't have it for a couple of years.
Exactly what we were doing when we did it,
Yeah. So, and knowing that the UT was sunsetting, that's, to me, so we've burdened the general fund, which I think we had to do.
We had to do it.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons we're in a predicament like we're in.
To me, it would have been unconscionable to continue it the way it was, just when you recognize that it's wrong. To me, that's how I saw it.
So this is an addition to the general fund.
It's in our general fund today,
Yeah.
being funded from reserves. Going forward, we would not recommend we continue to fund this with reserves. It's going to be absorbed in our general fund with our current operating revenues.
And this just started Last year?
last fiscal year.
Last fiscal year.
Last fiscal year, this is the second fiscal year.
Well, and there's still, and James is gonna get into this, I mean, the water permitting, the fate of that water permit is still up in the air. So, I mean, there could conceivably be a lot less cost going forward, depending on.
It could be a
what-
lot more, too.
Could be a lot more. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, that's
Yeah.
another thing too, is that when you put in the water rate or the sewer rate increase, you also have to have some sort of idea as to what those costs are gonna be going forward. And it was tenuous as to what those costs were gonna be based on, the stormwater permit, so.
I also understand that's one of the things that Proposition 1 is going to provide some funding for, isn't it? But how much we get?
How much we get, who
the
knows,
hell
yeah.
you know?
That concludes the contracts. I don't know if the council would like to, at this point, give staff direction if there's any of things here you'd like us to reduce and not budget for in the future.
I
That
think
was
we
the purpose of this.
Yeah, I think we probably should, so that we don't get this buried, so we don't forget exactly what we just went over as we go through the MPDS. So, we can either go through by the fund, or by the area, administrative, HR, police, public works, or if there's just ones that we think we should be discussing right now and giving direction on.
Well, I suggest that we even take it back a step and think about what our objective is, because I don't know if we've ever determined or agreed as to, are we looking at cuts for the entire amount, or I should say, are we looking to fill the gap for next year, starting next year? Are we looking at reducing this year to think about cuts for next year? I mean, what's our strategy as to how we want to approach this? Because we're looking at the next 2 fiscal years, correct? Are we looking to cut $800,000 by next fiscal year? Are we looking to do that with fiscal year 16, 17? So at least we kind of have some numbers. And then the other thing I want to ask is, considering what was approved last night, what the dollar amounts are for that delta or that difference, because I think we have some savings that we identified from last night, and how does that project out into the UUT sunsetting for next fiscal year and the following fiscal year?
At the most, what we did yesterday, to be conservative, is, because some things were put back in, we're probably for fiscal year
15, 16?
15, 16, $150,000 to $200,000 less in expenses for what we did last night.
I didn't think it was that much.
Well, there was
Or it was
170, you put 40 back in for the
Right.
director.
Yeah.
So that's 130, and that's why I said this next year, with the best estimate on the medical, because you also reduced the medical, was maybe another 100 conservatively. So put those two numbers together, you're at 200,
Okay.
that's right.
And did we,
Number.
does that take into account the possible revenue increase in property taxes?
This number here does. On page 8, to get to those deficits, that 8,738,000 and the 8,442,000 take into account the increased property taxes. So that's already been accounted for.
So, to Councilmember Arizmendi's point, yeah, I mean, I think that there's been discussion about whether we tried to front-load a lot of these cuts in 15, 16, or, make up most of it in 16, 17. I don't think we've actually determined which way we wanted to go. To me, I'm not sure if we want to have that conversation now on this, because, frankly, I don't think that there's going to be a ton that we're going to get consensus on here to cut, but I do think that we need to make that determination. I have my view on it, but I'm not sure if, all of us are going to agree, but I don't know if we want to have that right now, that conversation. I'm happy to, but
Well, I think it's something to think about, is we're thinking about, are we going down to bare minimum in all of these contractual items and these line items? Well, and again, I don't know which we do first, but obviously the contracts have to be considered. Secondly, we'll have to look at personnel. And do we do it backwards? Do we look at contractual line items at this point and then figure out what the difference is and look at personnel costs? We also still have to take in consideration did we get any responses back, Madam City Manager, about the contracting out for different services like police and, we didn't get that yet.
No, in fact, I
Well,
thought I did, it's on page
it's in-
2
yeah,
of the
it's in the
staff
report.
report. Page 2 of the staff report. Pasadena has already declined very politely to submit any proposals for anything. I'm meeting with the Arcadia city manager in about 2 weeks. I don't know what services they may be interested in. And it will take us a minimum of 30 days to hear back from the county, either county sheriffs or county fire or county library. And I'm waiting for the Monrovia city manager. He's only been on the job for a week or two. Kind of get settled in before I approach him and see if they might be interested in something. So that's where we are today. It will be, I've done this once before here in Sierra Madre. It will be a minimum of 4 to 6 months before I can return with numbers, because that's how long it takes these other agencies. They will be meeting with our chiefs, our department heads, gathering the data, the numbers, the number of calls, the type of calls. Then they go and do some proposals, run it through their hierarchy structure, come back to us, a little bit of back and forth. It's about a 4 to 6 month process.
Well, and realistically, that, if that's something we consider, it won't be until year 3, right? Year 16, 17. Fiscal year
Right, it would take that long, I
Right.
mean, it would take that long just to get through the
It
the outsourcing,
depends,
right?
it depends. It depends on what you're outsourcing. If it's, I'll pick on recreation services tonight. That transition can be made in 6 months. You can transition. I can tell you the
Police,
larger the
right.
police is a year
half.
transition minimum.
Minimum.
So you're gonna spend a year to 2 with the contract and the things we're required to do to meet and confer with the bargaining unit. That's a 2-year process easy, and then it's another year transition. So it's about a 3-year process from when you decide to initiate it.
So then, as we're considering this tonight and thinking about fiscal year 15, 16, we probably are just focusing on contracts and personnel costs. Yes?
Yeah, and, probably. And I think that, so my outlook on the contracts, even when we went through this the first time and before we brought it back, and I think this confirmed it for me, was I just don't know, going through this, if we're going to find much here. To me, nothing jumped out as being egregious or something that I wanted to actually eliminate. I mean, I don't have anything in here, and I would be interested to hear what everyone else has to say, but is there anything that, that I wanted to eliminate in here? No, and that to me is kind of, it goes to your question of, what is our outlook? And my outlook is more towards probably making big changes, looking at 16, 17, rather than trying to make these smaller changes now on the contracts, which most of these, 99% of them, in my view, are necessary. So this was a good exercise in my view. I'm not sure that we're going to find much savings here. So whether you're looking at 15, 16 or 16, 17, if you think it's a good idea to cut this, I think we should go for it. But, to me, I just don't know if this gets us to the goal.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think it's going to get us to 200, but I'm still thinking that I think it's a start. And let's say there's 50,000 here
yeah.
that we can
Well, that's what I'm saying. Let's go through, I get your point that, maybe, do we want to just have a goal and then based on that goal go through and say, okay, what fits in there? Or, to me, if there's something that jumps out at us that, regardless of what the goal is that we want to establish, if there's something that jumps out at any of the council members that we think should be analyzed and potentially eliminated,
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a goal for how much should we decrease in contracts necessarily, but, maybe it is. It's worth a discussion, because I don't know if we just go through and say, these are some items. I highlighted some areas where I think might be decreased or reduced. I didn't find anything that should be eliminated, except for actually some in the library where it was indicated that if we eliminate those contracts, that there won't be any impact. So,
Yeah. So let's go through.
Well, before you do that, let me just comment. I think for the technology, instead of looking at that right now, I do think we need to.
we need the IT, I agree,
We need that whole piece.
completely, yeah.
So I wouldn't touch
That's
any
gonna
of
come
the
back.
technology stuff right now.
Could I get clarification? You use a round figure of about 3 years to implement contracting out the police
To completely transition over to a new provider.
to transition over, meaning starting from square one? With
I mean,
when the-
having other, I'll pick the sheriff's.
You're saying
River.
starting about 6 months from now, say we get say we get a bid we liked and we let the contract, we're still talking
No.
3 years after that?
What the process, the reason it takes so long is, the initial proposal we'll get is going to be a high-level estimate of what the proposer thinks. I'll use police department as an example. It's called a phase one. Phase ones we get for free. Doesn't cost us any money. It's a very high level based upon our number of calls and types of calls. That's a phase one or two options. If it looks like we're interested, we go to a phase two. Phase two generally costs cities money because that's when they get into they actually come in and assess our facilities, our vehicles, our personnel. It's much more in-depth, and the numbers are refined. And in the meantime, the council's giving direction on what levels of service. We're meeting and conferring with the bargaining unit. That's a phase two. And then you get to, I would call it a phase three, then there's a development of an actual implementation plan. It's more complicated than just some employees go away and some employees go in. So phase three is the implementation plan. And then it takes about a year to transition services over. That's what takes so long. To go from a phase one to a phase two can be a 6-month process by itself.
The transitional year, then you would be starting with some of the services from the other city, but maybe have some of your services still in play, and you're trying to phase one in as you're phasing the other out. Is that what you mean by?
I've never been through that process before. I would need to, when I come back with a staff report, do some research. I've never actually been through this process before. I do know I have been told it's about a year to completely transition. I don't know why. I will do the research and figure out why it's that long.
What I'm getting at is if we were trying to budget for something like that, do we have enough time to budget to get an implementation in 2016, 2017?
No.
Okay.
There'd be we'd have some overlapping costs in 2016, 17. By 2017, 18.
That's your year, 2017, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is we'd be spending some reserves to get there.
We have to spend reserve.
We'd be spending reserves to get there. We'd be spending money on studies and analysis to get phase two, phase three. We'd be spending a lot of money in legal, doing the meet and confer process. One thing, the first year, the costs are actually going to be more than what we have today. And then during the transition, the first year of the transition, the cost is more because you're having to pay off all the employees if leave balances on the books, and our unemployment goes up. So the first year of contracting is always much more expensive. The second, third year of contracting is when you start seeing savings.
So you got to.
And we would
spend money
budget
to
it
make money.
appropriately, essentially. Mhm.
So how about we go through, and if any of these jump out, and we can just start with elected appointed administration and technology. Any in that group?
No, once again, I just think the whole technology piece needs to
Yeah, I mean, that's
be brought
huge,
back.
and I think that IT audit's gonna be great. Fire and paramedic?
Nothing for me.
Community services.
The only thing I could say is we might consider just eliminating the wisteria vine. I know I can just speak for myself. When it comes in the mail, it hangs around for a little bit, and you might refer to it, then it gets lost, then I go online to find what I need. That's the way it works in my house. I don't know about everybody else, but it's a beautiful document.
Yeah,
I
it's
really
great
like
table
it,
reading,
but,
yeah.
it might just be something that is time changes, people are more used to going online. It just might be the time to do that.
I think we have one of our goals in the strategic plan is a community enhancement communication. Isn't that one of our goals? So perhaps the wisteria vine can be transformed into something besides the wisteria vine. But I do think we need to have some sort of mailer or communication to the community.
I was going to say that, to me, it's a useful document, but it's also a reminder of the city. It's also a reminder, it's a kind of a community, one of the many little pieces of glue in the community, if you will.
It's not that much money. It's not much money,
Yeah.
so we could just move on. It's not really making a dent in anything.
Mm-mm.
Well, it's 10 plus 3, so I think we should.
Plus the staff time.
And the staff time. And, as we're looking at packaging a technology bid and as we're looking at a strategic plan for enhancing community communication, we can fold it in there. And I think for right now, let's just put it as a
Awesome.
parking lot possible elimination.
Because we could possibly do an e-newsletter that could also be printed out and available for people if they want the hard copy, and maybe just do one mailing a year or something. So there's some different avenues that we can go through.
Mm-hmm. Anything else in community services?
No. I don't have-
Police department.
I did have a question with the Humane Society, and is that a annual fee, the 24,000, or is that it's not by dog catch or something?
No, it's annual. Yeah.
Okay.
And if we went to the county, it'd be probably $15,000 savings.
No,
Right.
it wouldn't be that much.
I think we looked at it when we first, I think it was like $10,000. to
Probably
go to the county.
$10,000 savings. The county would bill us on a per call. It's a time and material when there was a loose dog or run over
Yeah.
dog. They charge us on a time and material per call.
When I did that last study for the past council, that was reduced service as well. It was just a total on-call. There was no patrolling in the city, no wildlife, no dog licensing. It was a minimum standard to get them to come in 5 days a week instead of 7, and only during daytime hours unless it was an emergency.
Got it. Thanks, chief.
Something like the professional services investigations can reduce that line item can we reduce that line item to like 15? We're freezing, one position for police? Is that even worth it?
We can definitely, we can definitely reduce it. I don't know what we've spent year to date, but we could go down to 15,000. That would,
I feel like we're in
Really?
background checks throughout the year, though.
we're always in backgrounds. People are always falling out of
Right.
backgrounds,
I
and
mean,
we're
that's the
starting
story of,
backgrounds.
that's
There's
the story of our
always-
recruiting there,
We
right?
do backgrounds on part-times and full-times, so but we could,
Risk.
we could reduce it. There's a risk we'd end up having to put more money back in, but
Well,
we could
the
reduce
risk,
it.
the risk is if you're not thorough, that
Oh,
you
we
could
have to
hire.
do thorough backgrounds. I mean,
Okay,
yeah.
so how could you save then? How could you
This
reduce
is a line, we only spend what we need to spend. They do a background, it costs X amount. If they only do 3 backgrounds and it's only $10,000, we're only gonna spend $10,000 of this line item. So it's activity-based,
So you're making a prediction of how much we're gonna spend?
exactly.
And this is probably how
Okay.
much we've spent in the
I-
last 2 years.
I just, if you think we'll spend less is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm just, so let's say, again, I don't know, and a goal of 50,000 that we can save from these contracts, and then you're looking at maybe another, 150 that will look in personnel. I know it's not much, it sounds minimal, but these $5,000 when you're looking at
Well,
different contracts.
see, I'm looking at it differently. I mean, you're talking about budgeting. I'm looking at how much are we gonna spend?
Expenses and
So the expense is the expense. If we're gonna hire people, we're gonna do the background. The question I think you're posing is, have we budgeted too much money? That's the question you're asking.
yes.
Okay.
And that's why I was going back to the questions as,
Says no.
like, the Humane Society, is that an annual contract? Yes, that's just a flat amount. This is not a flat amount, it's based on activity.
Yeah.
And the chief has just informed me, this is based on a historical trend over the last few years. It's what we've spent.
So I would say
Yeah, I
go
mean, I
with the
just-
number as it is. Yeah.
Have we ever gone over the 20,000? Because to me, that seems like
I
it's
heard
really
director, I
low.
heard somebody say yes. Yes, we have.
I think we have.
Okay, yeah, because I'm thinking 20,000, that's,
Yeah, it doesn't even seem that much. I think.
Seems very low.
so we have gone over that. Okay.
And just to advise the council, I redid, I think it was a year and a half ago, I actually went to our current background investigator who gave us a reduced cost of what we were paying before. And like I mentioned earlier, he gives me that 50% mark so I can decide whether we can cut it. So it's just the name of the game, you're gonna pay anywhere $1,500 to $2,000 a person. And you have to do it for DOJ requirements. And, depending on the quality of the person, it goes through fast. Other times it takes longer and they drop out.
Is this background check just for the police? personnel?
It's for anybody that is an employee of the police department because they always have access to the records.
So for the, and this is probably for our assistant city manager, for the other background checks that we have to do for employment, this is not included in that, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else on the police? All right, library services.
Well, I think we have those, the collection HQ and innovative interfaces for 1,828, those that, yeah, if we're not using it, might as well take it off.
Those are the only ones I,
So thank you, library, for putting money back in. Way to go.
So I can keep track. That was the page
17, 18.
collection HQ, the Brobart
Yep.
collection HQ, and
1828 for innovative.
innovative interfaces. Okay.
And can I just ask if the books and reference materials, is this including like the ebooks? No. That's separate?
Yeah, the Friends pays all these.
Okay.
Those friends. Yep. Any, council member?
Innovative, is that the 24,000?
No, it's the separate one on page 18, it's the smaller one.
It's 1828.
18,
And then did you take that,
1828, okay.
and did we take that one out that was a duplicate?
Well, I looked at that. Elaine,
That
is that
isn't gonna
really a
affect, that
duplicate?
isn't gonna, duplicates won't affect the bottom line.
Okay.
'Cause they weren't, yeah.
But the problem is that if it's a duplicate, it's two different numbers though, right? Because the one here is 30,000, the other one's 40,000, so what's the?
I'll need to see what's in
yeah,
the budget, the actual budget document.
From the
Those
finance
three-
department.
Those were 8,300 so far for the library. Right?
Okay.
I did the math right?
Then I'm missing one, Elaine, would you go over those again? I don't have 8,300. Innovative is 1828.
On page 17, on page 17,
Mhm.
Robart for 2,500,
Yes,
Collection 8Q for 4,000,
oh, I don't have that one, collection,
and Innovative Interfaces for 1828.
okay, 4,000. Okay, thanks.
All right. Finance department? HR?
Finance is okay?
Yeah.
Okay, HR.
In finance, we do have some possible savings if the interim doesn't last long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how much? I mean, preserve,
don't have
maybe a
any- I
monthly
couldn't-
calculation?
I couldn't even estimate, because it depends, if we go through 2, 3 recruitments, it could be a larger number.
Be a larger number.
Yeah.
HR, nothing?
Well, unless we can reduce the employment and labor law.
Can we just have all the employees behave? And then we can reduce that?
120, I don't know.
we could defer our retrospective a little bit, couldn't we? I mean, that is a possibility. I mean, I'm not in favor of that, but I just
Yeah.
want to make sure you're aware.
Potentially, we could,
Share.
we cannot defer payments on the liability portion anymore, and we
Right.
cannot not pay our annual contribution. And those two numbers together come to the 1.1 million. Now, if we have another year like we did last year, where the retrospective is in our favor and our number goes down, so we don't have to pay the full amount of our retrospective, then we have the opportunity not to backfill that, which is, last year we backfilled it so that we could keep paying it down, but we would have the opportunity to not backfill it again, but we won't know that
We
till the
won't know.
spring.
Okay, thank you.
Planning services?
I still would just like to know the discounted services, how many times we've used them, just to satisfy my own morbid curiosity.
I have a note for that.
Well, and, maybe just circulate to it might be helpful for the new council members, the staff report when we actually contracted for Wildan. I thought,
It's attached.
yeah, but I think that breaks it down, and so you don't have to circulate it, because it's in here, you're absolutely right. But, I mean, I think that, you know, to Councilmember Delmar's point, you know, are we saving money, are we leaving money on the table? I think it seems like we can make that, can we just make this simple analysis so that everyone's happy? Can't we just run simple numbers as to what would be paying for a full-time property inspector based on, you know, I don't know, competitive salary and healthcare benefits? Look and see how much we've gotten over the last year in building permit fees and et cetera. I mean, I think Councilmember Delmar's point is, are we leaving money on the table by contracting out Wilden? That doesn't seem like a hard number to come up with, unless I'm missing something.
Well, can I make a point
Yeah.
about that? I mean, if I remember correctly, part of the reason we were doing this is because we did not have a building inspector. We had so
He had
much.
just resigned, yeah.
Well, and we were using Wildan in a more expensive way to backfill for the person we didn't have anymore. And I don't remember how long he'd resigned. I thought we were using Wildan for quite a long time. Is that not?
No, he had just, I remember, he wasn't here for more than a year, I think, right, when he had stepped down?
He was here just over 18 months.
Yeah.
Just over 18 months, which was the contract we had before he received his building official certification. So he found work. he
No,
found
but
other
Wilden,
opportunities.
after he left, Wilden was here, remember, it was hourly. And I
Hourly.
would
Couple
say a
months.
year, maybe?
Really?
A year.
A year.
Oh, well,
About
that's
a
what
year.
my mind.
And to save, you might recall, and to save money, because it was hourly and it was expensive, we only had a building official, we used to get a lot of complaints. A couple days a week, building
Yeah.
inspection, and we got a lot of complaints, so this contract got us
Full-time.
full-time again,
And I guess,
at a
yeah.
cheaper cost than what we were paying before.
And I'm not doubting that.
Yeah, and I guess to her point,
I,
Councilmember
I would
Delmar's
just
point,
like,
let's just,
I would just like to show, I mean, everything that we have here is why we needed to have it, and I just want the backing, we still need to have it. I
Okay.
just, you know, because now we've been into it for a year and a half or something, 18 months, let's just show that, yes, we absolutely are saving our money, and this is a good thing. Because it's a new contract, so we really don't know. We need to run the numbers, in my opinion.
and I think the numbers, you know, and I think we should, but I think the numbers will probably show that Wilden makes a lot of sense.
I think
you
it
know?
will,
So,
but just, like I
that's
said,
fine,
to
yeah.
satisfy my little.
I understand. I can do that.
Danny, from Sausalito, please, just feed us the
Yeah.
numbers, yeah.
Anybody know what the name is?
What's the score? 3-2 who? They're in the last out. Wow, well, tell us when the last out happens. Yeah, well.
Public Works was
um,
next.
Okay, Public Works?
The thing with Public Works, and this is, I think this will actually get back to Councilman Arizmendi's point. The stormwater permit is really in flux right now, and I think probably Mr. Carlson will talk more about it.
Yep.
So, and that's a large amount of money, and it can either be more than what we're budgeting or a lot less, too. So I would hate to cut any services because we've based something on a high amount of the stormwater permit.
Yeah.
And we're not gonna really have that answer, you know, tonight or even the next couple months, and maybe Mr. Carlson can answer that as well. So,
So you would suggest possibly reducing the storm drain inserts?
No.
no, I think
No,
those,
no.
I think those costs are
It's an
there.
item we haven't
Those
gotten
are
to yet. It's the
existing.
budget.
Oh, sorry,
It's the
well-
budget for the MPDS, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, so, you know, all of these are the existing permit, but those are also gonna be part of, it's gonna come with the new permit.
Yeah.
Well, no, these two, the 14.4 and 41.3.
Those are for the new.
These are new permit.
What page are you on?
That's on 28. And also with the storm drain, why I'm a little confused is because this number is the same number that we have in the MPDS numbers for the future budget too. So that's why I was confused when we had talked
We're
about.
paying costs today. These
Yeah.
are, in
For
what's
the
in
new
the
storm
chart,
permit.
we're paying right now today to get our plans
Yeah.
done and the monitoring and the catch basin cleaning we need to do today.
I think it's
These
his
are-
turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, the budget is what we're predicting we're gonna need to pay out in future years, and some of the items could be the same. It doesn't mean we're triple paying, it means we still have to do it.
Chief is
Oh, they won. San Francisco won.
Yes!
Wow. Sad day in LA.
Okay, come on. What is with you people?
They're our enemy.
It wasn't like that they were playing the Dodgers.
Well,
All right, I apologize. This is,
Director Castro,
Okay.
you're going to a great place.
so let's transition out of the MPDS.
If we could transition to MPDS, that probably makes the most sense now, which is on page 3 of the staff report before Management Analyst Carlson speaks. I would like to say it's definitely a council policy decision on how we budget for these costs, which is why I think it's a good thing we're having this detailed conversation, because we can come up with low estimate, the council can direct, put the minimum in here, realizing that we could be in for a surprise later, we could be happy later, because the minimum was right, we could be in for a surprise later when staff's coming back saying we need to put $300,000 into a budget, versus, these are budgeting, we don't think they're on the high end.
Right.
We think
On the low end.
I think they're a little above average. I mean, if you were to say low end, high end, we're a little above in the middle
But
of what we
that's-
think the
but
cost
that's-
will be.
That's assuming that we have to incur a cost. In other words, that we have to actually build what we're planning to build, right?
We're gonna have to build something,
No,
but
I'm
we
not
don't
so-
know what
well,
it is,
I'm not
you're
so
right.
sure, but let's
Okay.
hear, and I'll
address
tell you
that.
why I
Yes.
think
Mayor
what
Pro
I
Tem,
think.
I'll address that as
I
well.
think we're thinking the same.
And
thing.
I apologize, this is a very complicated and dry subject. But I'm going to put just about 5 minutes for a high-end overview of where we're talking about, especially because we have some new council members here tonight. And the first question is, why do we have to do this in the first place? And the answer is because the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland caught on fire in 1969. What that did is that the federal government adopted the Clean Water Act in 1972, and it's based quite a bit on a Porter Cologne Act, which was a state of California act to address water pollution. Again, NPDES, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, comes from the Clean Water Act. The MS4 is a little bit of a trickier acronym, so I want to make sure we're all on the same page with that. It stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. You notice there's an M followed by 4 S's. That's why it's MS4. The reason it's separate storm sewer system is that's common on the West Coast, where the storm water goes directly to the ocean, the sewer water goes to be treated. On the East Coast, you'll find it's not separated. It's commonly going to the sewer. MS4 is what I hopefully will be able to get away with in the, going forward. What does the permit require us to do as a permittee? And yes, Sierra Madre is a permittee and has been with the old permit and the new permit. We have to prohibit non-stormwater discharges into the MS4. The MS4 can include a gutter, it can include a channel, it can include a pipe, anything before it gets to a larger water body that's termed a receiving water. And that's for non-dis water, or non-storm water. That's your nuisance water, that's your over-irrigation, all that type of stuff technically is against the Clean Water Act when it goes in your gutter. For stormwater, it cannot cause or contribute to any water quality objective exceedances. So obviously you can't prevent stormwater from going down the storm drain because that's what it was built for. It's built for flood protection primarily. December 28th, 2012, the new permit was adopted. So let's go ahead and be clear with that. There is an old permit. We are in a new permit right now. It's being challenged extensively, and I think that's what some of the council people were alluding to. In the new permit, we find basically the regulations were tightened across the board, some very minimally and some quite a bit, quite major. The first thing that we're looking at here is our new monitoring requirements. I alluded to receiving water monitoring. Again, we're talking about where the water is received. Around Sierra Madre, we have 2 receiving waters, the Arcadia Wash and the Santa Anita Wash. Those are legally receiving waters. The other component of our new monitoring requirements is outfall monitoring. So that's any kind of, I like to call it a pipe that's going out into a receiving water. You have to measure it here, and you have to measure it here. Finally, we have to do non-stormwater outfall monitoring. We got to go around all the pipes when it hasn't rained in a while. Are they dripping? Is there something bad coming out of them? The second and maybe even more important part about this new permit is that the TMDLs are now incorporated into the new permit and thus making them enforceable. A TMDL stands for a total maximum daily load. I like to describe it as a specific pollutant, or often group of pollutants, in a specific body of water that has a numeric limit of where the pollutants can be at. So when we go back up to during stormwater, we are not allowed to cause or contribute to any water quality objective exceedances. We're really looking at those TMDLs around here. What TMDLs have Sierra Madre's name on them right now. As Director Inman alluded to, the Los Angeles River Trash TMDL did start at the old permit, and we have been having to report on it, monitor for it, and plan to eradicate it. The trash TMDL is a very unique TMDL in which we have an option for prescriptive path to compliance. Other TMDLs have numeric compliance levels, so you have to measure and see if you're there or not. The numeric for trash is 0. Any cigarette butt gets in the wash, you're out of compliance. So they gave us an option to do a prescriptive project to put these inserts into all the catch basins in Sierra Madre, and we gain compliance that way. We have to be in compliance by next year, 2016. If we want to go back to page 29 and, I'm sorry, let me just do one more thing. The final thing that I wanted to point out about the new permit, and I consider it a benefit, is that it came up with a opportunity for cities to work together with a waste management plan or an enhanced waste management plan. And I promise I don't have a PowerPoint for you here, but I just have a couple things that I think will really help me with my descriptions. So if you want to turn around real quick.
Ooh, I've seen this before.
We decided to go ahead and go for an enhanced watershed management plan, which is down here. If we were just to take the baseline, we wouldn't have to do any early actions, and the only early actions we would be having to do is pass an LID ordinance and have a Green Street policy. Some of you may recall we went ahead and did this quite early, and our LID ordinance is in effect and is probably undoubtedly causing to more costs for review and plan check. A watershed management plan, you want to get together on your own or with a few other cities, and you don't want to do LID, you don't have to do any enhanced projects. Your compliance if you don't do anything is numeric. You have to hit those limits in the water no matter what. With a water management plan, you get to develop a plan. While you're developing the plan, you have a safe harbor. You're considered to be in compliance. Again, that has been challenged. Your final compliance, however, is still going to be numeric. You're doing a smaller plan. If you want to do a watershed management plan, you get 18 months to do this if you add the LID and Green Streets into it. Again, no enhanced projects. It's action-based, so you get that compliance or that safe harbor. Again, you're still going to be on the hook for the numerics at the end. We went for the long-term one, which is basically 2 years. You have to do the LID and Green Street policy. You have to do one enhanced watershed project per watershed. I'll go into a little bit more of that if you have questions. Again, it's action-based, so we get that compliance for the 2 years we're going through the plan, and we get some protection if we do the plan, and even if we have to go back and adapt our plan a little bit, we still maintain our compliance until we just stop doing what we said we were going to do. Now, there are still some numerics, and I don't want to get too tricky on that. So we decided to get together with a couple of groups, and I'll tell you why. Here's the groups real quick. Sierra Madre, Arcadia, Monrovia, Bradbury, DeWarty, Azusa. The Flood Control District is also a partner. They own the channels that you'll see. And LA County is also a partner, separate than flood control, because they own these islands of unincorporated county land. We made a little bit of an assumption here. We looked at our particular environment, our particular situation. We are all at the top of our watersheds. We're at the top of the Rio Hondo, which is a tributary of the LA River, and we're also at the top of the San Gabriel River. Previously, all of the data that was approved by the regional board that we could really use to develop TMDLs, to develop all of our numeric levels, we were monitoring right here or right here. And if you can imagine, these locations are just below the 60 freeway, and you're talking about water that goes through, gets commingled by communities that have much higher density and a much higher use of industrial. We made an assumption that our water at the top is going to be cleaner, and that's why we grouped together. Other EWIMP groups include almost the entire northern part of the LA River, almost the entire part of the southern LA River. We are probably the smallest and tightest and, I hope, cleanest one out there. Let's go ahead and look at that page 28, and I want to show you something real quick. The difference between the 14401 in our enhanced management plan and the difference between the number of the 41377 behind it, again, these are current year payments. The 14401 is a installment to pay our consultants for the plan itself. The 41377 is what we expect to pay for the first year of monitoring. So that's the difference right there. If you go to the far right, you'll notice that it's indicated for monitoring. If we want to go back and when we're looking at page 3 of the report and we're looking further ahead, 15 and 16 and 16, 17, you'll notice that we have one more payment for the plan of 14401 and 1516. Then that plan's going to be done. Right below that, we have $32,960 for the second payment for monitoring. That goes down quite a bit because we assume that a lot of equipment installation and a lot of front loading will happen the first year. These are still estimates. We're going out, and I wanted to, say, around $30,000 a year for monitoring. I apologize, Mayor, but why I think monitoring is probably the most important component of this is because it does give us the opportunity to, number one, prove we are cleaner. I'm sorry. Prove that we are cleaner than these old monitoring sites down here. Where we are going to monitor per our plan, I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see. We located a spot right here, right about there, and right about there, and that covers our entire EWIMP group. 2 spots will cover all 7 cities and all the other areas, as opposed to maybe having to do 2 spots just for Sierra Madre. So we would have to do the Arcadia Wash and the Santa Anita Wash. By getting together with this plan, we submit and we say, if we monitor there and there, we can be a lot more efficient and save a lot more money and capture the same thing. The other thing, if the monitoring comes back the way we like, is we will be able to reduce substantially the number of potential projects that we have identified in our plan because they're simply not necessary. Of course, we'll have to do some modeling and some analysis to prove that we don't think it's that way. But the monitoring has the possibility of saving us millions of dollars in the future. I consider $30,000 a year an insurance policy to prevent having to pay for $1 million projects to contribute to $1 million projects in the region. Lastly, I just want you to know that other than the intrinsic value of having clean water, it's been my goal for the city of Sierra Madre to get you into compliance at the cheapest cost. And getting you into compliance avoids two bad guys or boogeymen. It avoids the regional board, who can slap a fine on us, but even maybe more importantly, it avoids the third-party lawsuits. Third-party lawsuits can cripple cities, counties, and such. I mean, there was a recent one, 2012, that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. That's what I'm trying to insulate Sierra Madre from. And that's about it. Any questions?
Yeah, Analyst Carlson, one of the biggest controversies right now is that the LA board, regional board, has, on the graph you put there, allowed you this safe harbor if you do these EWIMP projects. What I was reading was this is the only place in California that has that requirement. Everybody else in their permits that they're issuing still has the old best practices. If you follow best practices, you have safe harbor. So, you know, that's what makes me doubt that this is going to be upheld over the long term, because it is really expensive. It's not a requirement of the EPA Clean Water Act. This is something that was cooked up by the regional board here in LA. It's not a requirement anywhere else in the state.
Well, two things to that. I don't think it's anybody's surprise that the LA County, which has Heal the Bay, the LA Waterkeeper, and the backing of the NRDC, would have the strictest permit. However, and the city attorney might help me out with this too, the Clean Water Act includes something called an anti-degradation policy, which means that any new permit cannot have less strict requirements than its previous permit. That indicates to me and most of the people in my group that if this whole thing gets thrown out, we're not going back any further than the previous permit.
Right.
And then that gets back to my point. That's why monitoring is still going to be beneficial to us.
And I get that. Monitoring's a great thing. What is bothering me is these huge costs that for potential completion of this EWIMP project, whatever that project is. Are you saying that this $100,000 and $200,000 is for monitoring that we'll have to spend?
That is a very rough.
So that's my point,
Right.
is that I really, if I was to bet, I would bet that this provision of requiring the EWIMP to get safe harbor is going to be thrown out. That's just me from what I've read. I believe there's going to be a hearing in November on it. Is that true?
I think that's been pushed back, to tell you the truth, but there are peripheral lawsuits that affect the EWIMP thing. The definition of a receiving water is
Yes.
something that has come up.
So
and
this
that's-
could be
that's-
tied up for years,
Right,
but
which could be tied up for years.
meantime, there are agencies in California, since the LA permit has been issued, that are issuing permits that don't require an EWIMP. They require just what was before, not less, but best practice implementation and get the safe harbor, which is what we had before this one was implemented.
I don't know that I know that the Ventura permit was recently passed. I think the San Diego permit was recently
I
passed.
heard North Orange County.
I thought that was still in flux.
Well,
That's where the
okay.
TMDLs come in, though. That's where the TMDLs have those strict numerics that really the EWIMPs help us address.
Well, they help you. The real crux of this discussion is it required to avoid being sued. In the past, if we implemented best practices, we had safe harbor. Maybe the city attorney can weigh in on this.
No, you're correct in that that's exactly what is being litigated and fought at the state regional board level. And but at the moment in time, the EWIMP is is the least expensive way for us to get that safe harbor. So right now, that is the law under our permit. So we, unless that gets overturned, and as you've noted, that is likely to be tied up in litigation for a very long time. And first, we've got to see what the State Water Board is going to do. And they can take a long time, and they are taking a long time to make that determination. In the meantime, we really do have to comply. And I am aware that other groups that have also decided to use an EWIMP are paying much, much more. So you're correct. It's
The question on the table was, do we, and I think this is what Councilmember Del Mar is getting to, is do we cut other things so that we can preserve this 100,000 and 200,000 in the budget when it is not certainty that we're going to spend that, and we can debate what we all think the probability of whether we're going to spend this. I'm just saying, if I was a betting person, I don't think we're going to spend that 100,000 in 15-16. That's just my opinion from my reading on the topic.
Can I get clarification on some? The 2 points in which we're going to be doing the measurements for our EWIP, what happens if they go south on us? Do we incur costs based on those measurements at Sierra Madre, or do we share the cost, or how's that work?
I don't understand
In terms
what
of
you
a
mean go
fine.
south on.
Well, I mean, if the measurements don't meet standard, presumably they have a standard.
We exceed the TDS.
We exceed the,
Sure.
so there's a fine, I'm guessing, right?
Well, as long as we have the quote safe harbor, we don't.
Oh, so we don't have to worry about the fine.
As long as we're in this process, we're
Okay.
safe, which is a hard statement to say definitively.
Alice Carlson, I do have a general question about the structure of the watershed quality group. I mean, obviously, you made a decision as a group, as an entity. Do we have an MOU? Do we have an
Yes.
agreement? Okay.
City Council approved it about
2013,
2 years ago,
Mm.
I think, when this started. There's an approved MOU.
January, February 2013 or something.
All right, so it's not just a matter of saying, hey, Sierra Madre just doesn't want to do this anymore.
No.
Okay, thank you.
And we're
Going it on our own would be much, much more expensive.
yeah.
This is really the best deal.
And an MOU is coming to your next regular city council meeting to pay for the monitoring itself.
There's a benefit to sharing these costs. I think what it comes down to, if you look at these line items, the staffing is the staffing. If we didn't pay it here, it's James' time and I think Bruce's time. It would just still be general fund. I think the street sweeping is gas tax funded. We have to do the street sweeping. So I think we really are down to just that NPDES compliance, the regional BMPs and the local BMPs, the 100,000 and the 75, and the 75,000 and the 200,000 and the 75,000. Again, as I said earlier, it's a council policy decision. If you want to eliminate those, that will reduce the bottom line, and that's what we'll budget in the city's budget. And if things are horrible and it's extremely more expensive, we come back and we adjust the budget and the council allocates the funds at that time.
We could
But at
take-
least we're not cutting.
Yeah, we have, I would view it as we have reserves. This is something that it's not certain it's gonna happen, so I think maybe if it did happen, we could pull it out of reserves and deal with it then.
And I would just need council consensus.
Yeah,
if
and
that's
we can
how
have
you wanna
discussion on
budget.
that. I want to make sure we get through this and then the benefits, and I do want to open up for public comment before we have discussion.
One clarification, the trash TMDL screens, I was hoping that we could either count on that or get direction that let's abandon that.
You mean the inserts?
The inserts, yeah. Okay.
Which is why I think we're really down to that big $100,000 and $200,000 number.
It's those two line items.
It's those two line items that are.
Thank you, Analyst Carlson. Let's,
Oh, can I just say one thing before he goes away? Thank you so much for answering all my husband's questions.
You're welcome.
I have all my materials from my consultant, and I also have a list of abbreviations, should you all need them to help.
it's hard. It's a learning curve.
But my immediate question is that when all of this started, the the California State Water Board had done what they call a worst-case scenario per household cost to implement this in each of the cities. And it was $32 at that time, and that was in 2011, $32 a household, right?
That's
So,
right, yeah.
and then they deleted a bunch of the requirements, so now they're saying it should be even less than $32 a household. So,
They're close to, up north where the weed is grown,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's where I'm having a little disconnect.
You know, we put together some data quite recently for the U.S. Conference of Mayors to that effect. And what we were able to do is show that there was a disparity between well-to-do communities and less than well-to-do communities, and trying to prove a point that it's hitting certain people much harder that don't have the means to meet it. So
And
I
that's
could
one of the
probably get-
reasons they're still
Yeah.
kind of taking things out of the permit requirement that they originally did in 2000.
Well, they haven't made any adjustments since 2012 when the new
Right.
permit was done.
That's what
There's a million different discussions happening everywhere.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So when they first did their analysis, and this is the state, okay, let's tell it what it is. The state said it was gonna be $32 a household. Then, from what I understand, and I know I'm simplifying this, and my husband hates it when I do it, but people got a little mad and said, hey, it's gonna cost way too much money, we don't have enough money, the cities don't have enough money. So they started getting a little pissy, and, then they started deleting the requirements, a lot of the community service and some of I have 14 things that they took away. And that's what we're dealing with now, currently, those are the requirements that we have. So what they're saying is, originally it was $32, we took all of this out, and this is what the state's saying, we took all of these things out, so it should be even less than the $32 as the worst-case scenario.
Well, it's actually the region, I think we're talking about, as opposed to the state.
This is the state, actually.
Okay, well, this is a regional permit, so it might be a little bit different. Although you're correct, the regional permit had to have a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
Which we all scoffed at.
But so this came down from the state, who then went to the region. So this all started at the federal government and goes to the state, goes to the region. And so that's where my disconnect is. So, I'm not like, Councilman Capocha, I just don't see this this is such a flux situation and everybody kind of fighting about it, that I just don't want to make cuts that we don't need to.
I perfectly understand.
So, I don't want to, that's my only point. But thank you so much. And you did a fine job explaining all of it.
Thank you, James.
It
Let's-
would help, I know we want to move, but it really would help to put this one to bed and tell us what numbers you would like us to include, because it
Well, then,
does
yeah.
make a difference
Let me
in
open
our
this up I
projection.
didn't open it up for public comment on the last round, and I apologize about that. So let's open it up for public comment. Any questions on this particular issue, MPDS, that anyone wants to give us? I heard, don't touch the reserves. All right, so we'll bring it back, and we can have a discussion on this. And, again, this is from a budget standpoint. Do we think that what we've budgeted, give or take $500,000 for the next 2 fiscal years, is too much for this? I will say that Monrovia has budgeted,
$1 million?
I think, more than $1 million. I think it's $1.5 million for this. Pasadena. These are bigger cities, but I want to, I always like to know what our neighbors are doing. And James, do we have those figures, what they've budgeted? And
I believe, unfortunately, Monrovia is the only group in our EWIMP that is doing the same process that we are right now, and I know that was above $1 million. Again, it's just an estimate for budgeting purposes.
Thank you.
So.
I'd like to hear what everyone has to say. I know that we're not an outlier here, and if anything, we're being somewhat conservative, I think.
Here's the other thing is, even if we did have to incur these costs, I really believe that there will be some money somewhere coming from it, because of the point that was made about the social justice issue, that, you know, we've got like, I remember about a year ago, I was in Vernon.
Tell us how you really feel.
No, in Vernon, it was just incredibly filthy. I went to a lumber yard down there, and just everywhere you drove down the street, it just was filth. Now, they're not gonna be able to comply, period. If these kinds of requirements are imposed, somebody's gonna have to come up with some money. And as I said, the Proposition 1, there's money set aside for these kind of projects. How much we would get, I don't know. I think the disadvantaged communities might get more.
Yeah.
You know, we are not alone in this dilemma. Our city is well off compared to most of the cities in the LA area here. And I just think we're counting on something happening that I think is just very tenuous. I mean, it's just, you know, we know that it's up in the air. We know that there's lawsuits. We know that the process is going to take forever just because people are going to fight it every step of the way.
So to play devil's advocate, and, you know, look, I think that it is tenuous what's going to happen. The problem is with the status, status of the permit is it's already been established. So I think it's going to be tied up in litigation for 3 years, let's say. While it's caught up in litigation, we have to do all this stuff.
There's a lot we have to do, but I just don't think we have to budget for the 175 and the 275. Just another point. We know we have fires in the mountains all the time. Are we budgeting for, you know?
No, but there's no permit or law that says that you have to do that, and nor would we wouldn't be subject to any litigation from third parties if we weren't doing that. The problem here is that if you don't spend the money, and look, I'm with you guys. Look, I would love to save the money, but I'm saying if you don't budget the money.
I think perhaps I'm not making myself clear.
Please, sorry.
There is a chance that this could happen. I'm just saying we shouldn't budget for it. I'm saying this is what reserves can be used for, to pay for something that is unusual that comes up. This is not something that we are certain is going to happen.
But
what we're being asked to do is make some deep cuts to things that we know people use today, so that we can set aside money for something that may or may not happen. That's the problem I have with it.
And I guess the way that you characterize it, though, may or may not happen. I agree that this could get overturned, but the problem is, as of now, it's the law. So
no,
as of now, this is what we have to do.
We don't have.
Ask a question for you guys?
Bartley, please. I will let you come up. I opened it up for public comment so that we could. So I will bring you back up, but let us finish this point. Thank you.
We don't know that we have to build anything. We're just developing a plan. That plan is even nebulous. The plan has to be approved even before we build anything. That plan could sit on the water board's desk for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing. What you're saying is that it's a probability game, and to me, I agree with you. It's a probability game, but that means that you have to budget something. I don't think you can't budget anything because you have to take whatever percentage you think, the percentage of the likelihood that this thing stays what it is, which is the law, doesn't get overturned. Well, then what is that cost going forward? And then multiply that by whatever probability that you think it's going to get overturned. So I think that you need to have something there. I think that we've actually guessed, it seems like we've guessed conservatively. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that we haven't actually gone, full Monty on this as other cities have done. Is that true? I mean, Barbara, you can answer that. I'm not sure if you.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in the staff report that give me a year and I will know a lot more because I will know what's contained in our plan for potential projects. I'll have a little bit of data from the monitoring to know the likeliness of eliminating projects, and in a year we might have some of this other stuff sorted out. So for budgetary purposes and placeholders, that's the best I could do.
Analyst Carlson, you made a point also that once we start monitoring, we could be very clean and maybe not even have to build anything, regardless of what the courts do with this stuff.
Absolutely. And even if we have a bug or two, at least we know that our projects are going for that bug or that bug, and we're not chasing anything that's not really there.
But can we be clear? Can you just clarify, BMP, these are projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what could be a potential project? Because I've understood it as maybe you can build something, but projects, it's been used pretty loosely here, right? A project could be just continued, a continued monitoring program between the cities, right?
No, it can't be
So
monitoring.
it has to be actual infrastructure.
We are currently at the very initial phase of site selection and going over 25 to 50 potential sites. I'll give you one because I think you can all picture it somewhat in your head. That there's a lake in the Arboretum called Baldwin Lake. It's historic. It has multi-benefits. It's ground recharge. It'd be appreciated by the Parks and Recreation Department and everything like that. That's something that is on our radar. Now that's something that would be a little bit more specific for the Rio Hondo side and the Arcadia Wash side. But infiltration and rehabilitation of that lake would be something that would be a project.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
I forgot my question. Madam City Manager, you did say, though, these estimates on the higher than average, or higher than the middle.
To a little higher than middle probably is, our best guess. We don't know. I can tell you they're not the absolutely highest we think it could be, and they're not the lowest we think it could be.
Well, just as we're looking at having placeholders and budgeting, if we can go down lower on across the board, but on specific items, it sounds like Mayor Pro Tem, that there's something specific, which is the
It's really
regional
just the 100 and the 75. It's just
Okay.
those everything else we know we have to do. Those other two are the questionable ones.
So the regional BMP and the local BMP is where you're recommending to decrease them, but.
That's my opinion.
And these these aren't ongoing funds. We don't have to do this every year. It's just like a one-time, the project, or for 16, 17, you have 200,000, would 17, 18 be 200,000, or?
It's really dependent. I don't want to mislead you and say that it's going to fall off anytime soon. It really depended on how many regional projects we will have to do. And anytime we're submitting a plan that has to go through modeling and a reasonable assurance analysis that what we say in our plan will actually work. So that's a considerable expense we're going through as well. Like I think the better the monitoring, the better information I'll have for you, and I think there's a very, very strong chance that the monitoring will show we can eliminate a number of potential projects.
So is it fair to say in 15, 16, we're not going to do any projects?
I think it's fair to say we will just do a very, very initial.
So it probably
However,
would be 100,000, right?
Well,
For 15, 16,
yeah.
I mean, that's like coming up.
That's
We
not
don't even have a plan yet,
that's
right?
that's not a bad philosophy to look at. I think sooner is probably less than later.
Our costs are proportional to our population with the whole group, correct?
Exactly correct. That's another benefit. We do throw in considerably less than some of the other cities.
Well, are we willing to throw out, 50,000 for the regional and 50,000 for the local? I mean, I'm taking stabs in the dark.
Yeah, exactly.
For me,
Well, I would be just interested, and I know that this is somewhat of a guess, but I'm happy reducing these. That's fine. I would love some sort of defensible metric if we are going to do that. So if we were to go down to 50, what does that mean? We're just planning that the project's smaller, or
Starts later.
starts
Starts
later?
later,
Yeah.
essentially.
Is that it?
It's gonna start
Essentially
June or
smaller
July.
and starts later.
Yeah, and they don't even have a plan yet,
And I think the
Well,
city attorney has been wanting to say something, council. I think just,
It might mean that it's smaller and starts later, or it might mean that the city manager has to come back and ask you to appropriate funds from your reserve. The one message that you do not want to put out to potential third-party litigants
You're not taking it
is that you're not taking it seriously, and that you have not properly funded, and that you don't intend to take steps should they come up. The problem is, as James has explained, we just don't know what all those projects, or I shouldn't even say all those projects. We just don't know what any of those projects may look like, other than the trash racks. You need the trash racks. But other than that, it is early in the game. You can count on needing to do the monitoring, but you are at the top of the watershed. So the assumption is that there should be, you should really have less costs than those who are further down the chain in the watershed. You have we have the cleanest water, and but it is a guess. So yes, I think you could reduce, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you reduce that you would put off complying with the law as we know it now.
Oh, I'm not at all saying we're not complying.
Right, I just
I'm
wanted
just
to
saying that
make sure.
for a budgetary reason, and because I would hate to close something down or contract something out and then come back and 17, 18 and said, oh, we did our project, it was
Could have done it,
25,000.
we could have still.
You know,
Don't even have a problem.
so if we, because this is, I mean, to me, these are not real numbers. They're just, we just put it, and we do have reserves, and I just agree with Councilman Capocia that if we need to, then we can, we can kind of say that we have it in the reserves, or, if we want to put some of it in the reserves right now to place market, but I just don't really think we need to have all of this big expense as part of the budget.
Well, the other way to think about it too is this is about 5% of our total general fund. I think we're taking it pretty seriously. I think it makes a statement to say that we think it's important. So it's not as if we don't think this is not going to happen or we don't need to do it. But again, looking at some of these line items to decrease them.
And how many years is this going to take? Are we going to be sitting here in 18, 19 saying we're still waiting for that monitoring plan to get approved, and, so that's,
I mean, before you build a big public works thing like this, first of all, you've got to finish the
Trying to get you
plan. The plan has to be approved, and that could sit around for a long time. Then you have to design it before you break ground on anything. So, I mean, I just think this is overly ambitious to even think that this is gonna happen this soon.
Should we do just, I
Hold on,
just want to
sorry,
move on.
Councilmember Gus
to
hasn't
25
had
and
it.
25 and 50
Yeah,
and
yeah.
50.
Hold on.
So-
I don't have
Councilman Russ.
anything really additional to add, except that, my basic philosophy on things is I'm very cautious by nature, and I'd err on the side of caution here. I mean, if there's even a reasonable possibility that we would have some significant costs, I wouldn't cut this very much. I certainly wouldn't count on using our reserves in the future, because there are many other things we may need to use our reserves for. That's why they're there. You don't know when you're going to need them. I remember the windstorm, for instance. So, yeah, I'm on board for cutting this somewhat, but I don't want to go too whole hog on it.
Barbara Lee, what's the answer? You wanted to say something. Can you stand up?
I was saying what you guys really just brought up right now. Think of it as a CRA. Where are we with that? So until the state gets its act together, we're stuck with what the state's mandating for us. But I would not touch the reserves because of the windstorm, because of the fires, because of the earthquakes, because of what we don't know and where we are. So that was my point. I was trying to make it easier for you guys than on where to cut this particular area. It was a long discussion back a couple years ago, lengthy, and as to why it was decided, and it was wonderful what James just presented. I think it's better to look at where the cuts can come elsewhere. But I would say don't touch the reserves.
Thank you. Sorry, and City Manager, you had made a point, 25, what were you saying? Sorry.
Because of the theory of having something there to show we're taking this seriously. $25,000 isn't a small amount. 25, and then the theory that really our cost, it'll be 2 years from now before we really know. So, either 25 and then 50. It really could be any amount. I know we don't want to use reserves, but we could also set aside, because remember, we're going to be, once the audit's done, we come back to the council with our unobligated, unallocated reserves. We could defend ourselves in the future by saying, council, set aside, pick an amount, any amount, $100,000 in our unallocated, unobligated reserves for this potential. So the money's there if we need it, and then if we don't need it, you unobligate those reserves and they go back into whatever else you want to use them for. So we have some options here.
The Monrovia expenditure, they're looking at about $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Does that pencil out as proportional to us because we're so much smaller, or are they making a much bigger commitment, and do you know why?
I reached over, just last week when I was asked to put this together and say, what's your ballpark? And they said, 1.2 million. And I said, is that total or is that regional and local? And they said they hadn't broken that up for sure yet. And so it's very, very extremely rough. But Director Inman did remind me of one point that I think is kind of crucial for your consideration, is that our budgets are also, our stormwater budgets are submitted into our annual reports, which are public documents and scrutinized by
Yeah.
a number of people. So, want to keep that.
Agencies, you mean?
Agencies, yeah.
And third-party litigants.
So if we have that allocated fund, right, that would be okay? So we'd be okay with that, right? So we wouldn't have to include it in, when he submits his budget, the state, he could say that we have these allocated funds set aside.
You could put an asterisk and say, yes, that there are funds which have been set aside in reserves for necessary compliance projects when they arise. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many moving parts with this permit, and God bless James, because I have no idea how you're doing this. I really don't. I tried to listen to my husband explain it to me, and I, gazed over probably 2 minutes into it. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing for this.
I guess, so if we were to set aside, a part of our reserve, unallocated reserve, then what's the difference between, I'm asking from like a budget standpoint, what's the difference of having an?
This could be zeroed out in our budget.
Yeah.
Instead, it's sitting in
still have
our
the-
audit as an obligated reserve in our audit. And then the point at which we do incur expenses, the money moves from the reserves, we transfer it into the budget, the appropriation, and then the expenditure.
And when do we get the audit back?
We always do that around January, February at the latest.
So I guess I'm okay reducing this. I don't know if I'm okay then, I would rather not do the whole allocate the budget, the reserves. I don't think we want to go down that path. I think this is separate. I mean, I'm not saying that, we're getting into a habit of spending reserves or using that to balance the general fund. I'm not saying that. I just think that let's reduce it, and then, whatever number we come up with, let's make sure it's defensible, and then we go forward. And we just know that maybe we win, maybe we lose. Maybe we spend more in reserves, and maybe we actually make money or save money.
Just ask a question
Yeah.
about the reserves. I mean, you're suggesting unallocated reserves. That's the amount of the reserves that we have that is over and above our policy?
Correct.
Okay, so our policy is 50% of revenue.
Don't touch that.
Yeah.
It's the amount above that.
And we have
We have
more above.
unallocated reserves, yes, we
Right,
do.
so, yeah, and we could spend that money. I mean, the council could take that and choose to spend it on sidewalks or anything we want. So I think that's a great suggestion. Why don't we just hold it right there?
Did
Well,
we
what's the
not just-
difference? I mean,
did we
because the
not
point is there's no difference. I mean, if you
No,
put it.
there is to
No,
me.
there isn't, because
No.
here's why there's no difference. You put it in your general fund, okay? If you spend it, you spend it. If you don't, it goes into the reserves, right? If you put it in the general fund, reserve, if you spend it, you spend it. If you don't, you don't. I mean, it's the same. It's an accounting,
Well,
it's an
it is,
accounting
but
thing.
it isn't, because the point, again, that Councilmember Delmar brought up is if we don't take this out, we are going to cut some programs that are going to affect people for something that could be fairy dust.
Yeah, but it's not fair it's the law, and that's the
I know,
problem.
but
That's the
we've
problem.
taken care of that. We've said we respect the law,
But I don't think that,
and we have that money. We're just
Yeah.
not gonna put it in the budget right now. We're gonna set it aside, and when all you state people and regional people decide what it is we need to do, here's our money, and we'll put it back in. But for right now, we're just gonna set it aside. It's not gonna be part of our budget,
Of the general fund budget.
of the general fund budget.
And I just want to caution us too, I think we agendized to relook at our policy for
Yes.
reserves.
We're gonna
So,
bring that back when the audit's
we'd
done.
already, and we looked
It's
at
been
that before.
agendized already.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's how you should budget. I mean, I think you budget whatever the number you think it is. If we think it's whatever we're gonna set aside in the general fund reserves, just let's pick that number and have it in the general fund. Why are you gonna set,
Okay.
that's the point. I mean,
What do we think it's
I don't
gonna
know.
be?
I mean, it sounds like it's guesswork. I mean, I don't know.
Well, let's come up with a number
Let's come up with a
that
number.
we can agree on. Maybe something a little more than zero and a little less than 175,000.
But then when you get to the point where you could use that money to not cut funds. But if we had it allocated, then you're gonna be cutting the fund.
I'm comfortable with allocating it. If we
Yeah.
don't, we don't. But I'm comfortable doing it just to demonstrate that, yes, we're taking it seriously. Yes, we have the money there in case we need to go into project sooner rather than later.
Because it sounds to me, in a year, we're gonna know a lot more. Right now, we don't know. Right now, a year ago, my assumption is that,
Pick a number.
yeah, my assumption is that we kind of had an idea what was happening, then things changed. We don't know right now. And, we were told probably in a year, that's when we're gonna know.
So how about the regional at 50,000 and local at 25? Is that too low?
1525.
I don't know, I would just go
50,000?
all of it, just allocated out.
Oh, see, and I would say to hold it as
I'd
I would
rather
say to
keep it in
hold
the
it as a
general
line
fund.
item. Is to go 50,000 for regional, 25,000 for local.
And then put some in
Earmark-
in allocation.
Earmark and allocation dollar amount in reserves, and then that will save us what, 50 plus 50, 100,000. Woohoo.
There you go.
Put back
And
all
I
those
still,
contract
I even,
expenses for that.
I even think
real
that's,
comfortable with
that's
that, but-
high, but
Oh, you think it's too high?
I do. I think if you're gonna allocate it, yeah, I don't know. Maybe because I read too much of this crap, but I just think this is gonna,
So are you saying that you'd put it in the unallocated reserve or allocate it in the general fund? I didn't catch it.
In the general fund, put 50,000 for the regional, and then put 25,000 for the local.
for both years?
Oh, no, that was just for 15, 16.
No, for 15, 16, that's way too high.
Oh, you even think it's too high for 15,
Oh, yeah.
16?
I would do that for 16, 17, but for 15, 16. As long as we have some allocated, if we absolutely need it, yeah, that's way too high.
What do other folks think? I mean, I could
don't even
talked
have-
into something.
They don't even have a plan yet. They don't even
Well, no, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that we don't spend something in 15,
Fairy
16.
dust.
I mean, I just,
Really hard.
I don't know, we're dealing with
What do you
different
think,
levels of
City
government. There are a lot of
A wise one?
intangibles here.
Yeah, the problem that everyone's struggling with is unless we can even guess what those projects would look like in 15, 16, which is really around the corner, it's impossible to know what that number would be. This is just a plug-in number, the 100,000. So I think in good faith, I mean, this is a great discussion, it's good for the record. Anyone reviewing this would know how seriously the city is taking it. And you were one of the first cities to jump on to jump right in there and start implementing the provisions. So I think that is a very good record for the city. I think you could safely reduce the numbers in 15, 16 at least, because it really is right around the corner. Unless James can give us some examples of types
That's
of
what I was gonna ask.
projects, and I think it sounds like he says it's too early, but if there are some
Well,
examples.
I'm sure they've been discussing,
Couple different
Yeah.
things. I'm busted either way. If I come in over or under, I'm busted. But I might recommend after this discussion, or hearing this discussion, that maybe a little bit more is in local as opposed to regional, because I think there are opportunities for Sierra Madre to do some local projects such as green streets, which would also enhance our water recharge and have dual benefits, and would make Sierra Madre look good in front of the regional board as well as my EWIMP group. So that was something that just occurred to me.
And what kind of costs are you talking about on a Green Street project? What is that?
There's a huge variety. They've all been kind of tabletop discussions at this point. Anything from simply cutting a curb and doing some re-landscaping to move some parking lot water into some areas where it can recharge, to considering a more grandiose Green Street corridor if we get the occasion where we're going to do something to a street anyhow. I don't know that we really are, but it would give us an opportunity to really get that groundwater recharge and put a notch in our cap for stormwater as well.
Well-
I think that's a good idea. How about $50,000 for local and zero for regional for 2016?
well, and is there any regional project that's been discussed amongst you?
There's been a 40 to 50,
Okay,
but
so,
again, we're still at preliminary stages.
And And how many times a month do you meet?
3 to 4, depending on what's coming up, what the deadline is facing, yeah.
Well, and with all due respect, I mean, I can imagine that doing some of these projects would demonstrate goodwill and show that Sierra Madre is taking a lead in these efforts. But we're also looking at some of these contracts, we were cutting $3,000 out, $5,000 out, which are pretty core services that I know we need to prioritize, and I'm just thinking this may not be where it is.
I think it's a priority that we have that money set aside and.
Set aside, yes.
And allocated.
Yes.
You know, above our reserves, we're not going into our reserves. And then once we have an idea of what's going on, then we can put it back in the
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
But right now, I just don't think we have that. We don't have that knowledge because.
Good amount there.
Here's a way that maybe I can get
It's fairy
a little
dust.
more comfortable with this, because here's why it's not fairy dust. There's timelines. I mean, some of this has to happen on at a certain, time. So what are those timelines? When do these projects need to be built? I know that you had showed a brief in your presentation here, I think a summary of that, but I remember when we first talked about this, there's a lot of different things that have to happen at different times. So is there anything that needs to happen in 15 and 16 in terms of project building?
Local,
Well,
regional.
the plan is submitted June 28th of 15.
Okay.
To put that in perspective.
Yeah,
We
that
submit
helps a
and we
lot.
have 1 year. Now, the permit requires us to submit in a certain amount of time. It does not require the regional board to get back to us in a certain amount of time.
So then the first year, it's defensible to not spend anything if we think that the plan, once it's submitted, is just going to sit there for a year.
Unless they get back to us in 2 months.
We don't know.
But actually,
That's a-
but based on
We don't
that
know.
timeline, I'm okay then reducing the 15, 16.
Probably
In
not.
16, 17, we think they're going to come back to us and say,
Mm-hmm.
if this is still the law, here's the project, or, here's what you have to do.
I'm pretty comfortable with taking quite a bit out of regional
15, 16.
projects, 15, 16. Whether you want to put some in to demonstrate an effort or not is entirely up to you. I'm just a little worried that, the regional board gets direction from, go ahead and approve these because we need to do this now and get them started. And I'll have to just simply come back to you and say, hey, it's November, or it's, I'm sorry, towards the end of the
But we'll-
fiscal year, and here's where we're at.
But that we will have that money, right? So it'll be set, and we can put it back.
If you've
Mhm.
done it
If you
as
set
you
it aside in
described,
reserves,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So I guess for 15, 16, I'm fine then. I would even, zero out the regional BMP then. But I mean, again, but this is.
That scares me.
But this is defensible because I think that we have some sort of process here. We have, I can understand why that would make sense. Before, I thought we were just kind of picking numbers out. So regional BMP, I don't think we're going to spend anything in 15, 16. Local, maybe we're spending $50,000, something like that.
Okay.
All right.
To put in
That's
the
doable.
budget, but I want to make sure that in our allocated funds, we have more than that.
Yeah.
Just in case, we want to make sure.
Right, let's figure out what these line items should be, and then you please tell me what you want me to have finance set aside in our reserves.
And are
In
you,
two pieces.
are we sure we want to show nothing on regional? I
But
mean,
we're not showing nothing.
'Cause we're gonna have some sitting
showing
inside
that
in
we have it
reserves.
set
Right.
aside.
so zero in general fund, you're saying, and
Right.
setting it aside.
Well, on regional, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I
For
don't think
16,
Councilmember Gus,
17?
you don't like that, so, maybe
What
there's
do you
some
think?
workaround.
It all has a, I'm not being disrespectful. You guys are working hard at this. I get that. It just sounds gimmicky to me. I'm more straightforward than this. I kind of like to have a more straightforward accounting. If that money's in reserves, it's in reserves. If it's unaccounted for or not, we may need it. I mean, so if we're gonna encumber it, we can't use it for other things. And so I'm again very cautious about reserves. But I do take the point that in the first year, our costs are likely to be less than the second year and the third year. So I could go with much lower numbers in the first year. I just rather see it in the general fund.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the same mind. I don't even need to do the whole encumbered in the
And
reserve
I think we should
thing.
have something for the regional. I mean,
What do you guys suggest?
well, I don't know, something that, I'm just getting, I'd like the other cities involved to know that, you know, we're taking this serious, we're full partners, we're planning to expend money if we have to do it.
25?
I
I'm
don't know.
thinking 10, just so for a
I'd go with
placeholder.
10 or 15, yeah.
Yeah, but understand that the cities know that we are serious about this.
Well, do,
Well, they're
put
not gonna
10,
come
just
and
put
watch
the,
the tape of this meeting, or.
yeah, put 10, put 10,000 for regional, and put 50 for local. You just, you know,
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
Okay.
but we'll have more if needed.
Right.
you know, we have healthy.
And we're
reserves.
serious.
But I wouldn't encumber, but I agree with Councilmember Goss, and the point is, I wouldn't encumber the reserves. You know, it's just, if we need them, we need them. I mean, they're there, so.
No, I would like to have it, I think
just,
I think it's better legally and for the
for the
permit.
audit.
That we
Don't,
say,
you don't need to worry too much about encumbering some of the reserves, because it just takes a council resolution to unencumber them. So I don't want that to be fearful.
I just think it looks nice and tells everybody that we're very serious about this and we want to do it correctly. And we can't, I'm like you, I'm very straightforward. I want to see real numbers. We can't make a decision because we have no real numbers. We have no real project. But I want to make sure that we have that money. You know, if it's 300,000, we put 300,000 aside, and when they come back in a year and they say, hey, it's only, 100,000, okay, it's only 100,000, but, oh, no, it really is going to be 300, then we have it. To me, we can't spend that money. We have to have something. We can't spend the money, but we don't have to put it in our budget so that as we go forward, we make those cuts. That's all I'm saying.
Could I just say something about reserves? I'm not comfortable with a 50% reserve anyway. I'd rather see it more like 75%.
Okay.
When I'm thinking about unencumbered reserves, I'm thinking, well, okay, but when you spend the money in the general fund and put the money in other words, if we don't spend it now in the general fund, we're gonna spend the money that's allocated for that on something else. It's gone. So we are now for sure gonna spend it in reserves if the cost comes up. So it's not like, we're gambling with our reserves is what we're doing.
And
So
then
I'm
these are one-time funds, right? This is not an ongoing, we're not gonna be doing projects, up until
Who knows?
no one knows.
No one knows. I mean, yeah, we could be doing projects every year. That's the problem.
Well, no one knows.
It's a safe harbor.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just would
fortunately,
like-
we're going to run models and tell it, you have a pretty good idea if this project's gonna work. The permit also allows us to quote, safe harbor in case it doesn't quite work. We can be adaptive in our plan and make a few little changes. You would expect those to be smaller, but I can't say that these are one-time funds. Another point that I wanted to just bring up, and I wish Karen was still around to bounce this off for her.
You should tally how many times you say that.
It's similar to what I think you're discussing now. There is some discussion of identifying these funds as unfunded liabilities, which cities would take a hit possibly on some ratings.
Our balance sheet, yep.
Right, but it would also.
I wouldn't recommend that.
It's a finance.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Method, so.
Wouldn't recommend that.
Okay.
So what are the numbers then?
10 and 50.
I'm good with what was just suggested,
10 and 50
10 and 50. yeah.
Okay.
In the general fund?
for 15, 16, right?
And then 16, 17?
100, 150?
I don't think we have,
Blowing in the wind here, I mean, just
Yeah, I don't know
a
either.
little more maybe?
it would depend on if we're having allocated funds or not, if we have place marker funds.
Yeah, and I just think that's the right thing to do. It's not a gimmick.
Well, I'm not trying to be demeaning.
No,
I'm
no,
just-
I understand that, but I just don't view it that way
I
at
don't
all.
either.
I think this is an appropriate way to characterize it, because it is not a budgeted item. We don't know what it is. But we are responsible and we set aside money for
Have we
it.
ever done anything similar to this in another area where we've taken money and put it into unallocated reserves?
Yes, we have. When we had the fire and the windstorm, that's exactly how we handled
Oh,
it.
that's
It was
right,
sitting in
yeah.
reserves, and we pulled it from reserves to the general fund to pay off our share of the expenses. So we have done it for disasters.
And to your point, I mean, I don't disagree with you that maybe the reserve should be higher than 50%, but that's the policy now, and we have an amount that's over and above that, and I think this is an appropriate use of that money. Just hold it there. It doesn't mean we're gonna spend it, And if we need to spend it, it's there.
The disaster is probably a good example, because once all the expenses came in, we didn't know what they were. That's part of the reason why we have above our policy, because the council took action a year or two ago to unobligate those
Yeah. Right.
fire reserves, and they just went back to unallocated reserves, and we knew all the expenses came in and we didn't need them anymore.
So does anyone have any thoughts of 16, 17?
I really
threw
don't
out
think that we
numbers.
can even begin to, I would say high on keeping a place card, but not putting it in the budget right now. We'll know more, and,
Yeah.
I
agree with Councilmember Delmar, but I'm willing to put something in if
Yeah.
if it satisfies three
We can
other
do
council
50-50.
members.
Yeah,
if
I
you
mean, I
want.
just think if you, maybe it's 50/50.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Again, I'm throwing it out there, placeholder, because as we're planning in these next 2 years, it will help us, at least guide us.
That's
to
what
some
I want to
degree.
do, yeah. I
Right.
want to have,
So 50/50, yes, we're okay?
Okay,
It's fun.
sounds good.
And what amount
just
would you
saved
like
some
to
money,
set
right?
aside? We did.
Yes.
What amount would you like to set aside in
take the
reserves?
difference.
Yeah, whatever
add
the
seven-
difference is.
That
This
is
is a
perfect, thank
wild-
you.
Get out the green
No, that
light.
answers it.
Yes,
I
yeah,
understand.
just
Okay.
take the difference and put it there.
Okay.
Are you happy with that, Mr. Carlson? Will that work with your budgeting and stuff, and, because we want to keep you happy.
Especially because
Okay.
the poor name is MWIP. MWIP.
Did you know what that stood for? Because I have my acronyms.
EWIMP.
list.
Sad name.
Advanced Water Management Plan.
If we're ready for the
Watershed.
next,
Let's go on to the
Page
PERS and
4.
healthcare benefits, please.
PERS and healthcare benefits. I want to start off by saying the numbers that are shown in the staff report are the numbers that were budgeted. Again, this budget was prepared 2.5, 3 years ago. Our actual costs are going to be less than what is shown in this staff report, because some of the healthcare premiums have decreased, some have increased, but some have decreased. We've had multiple staff vacancies, so we won't be spending all the money that's been budgeted. The reorganization, when the staff report was prepared, we didn't have a cap on our medical benefits. As you're all aware, we now have a cap on our medical benefits, so that's going to result in a decrease in our cost. And when it comes to, which I'll have Assistant City Manager Cox explain, we are going to see over time a reduction in what we spend on CalPERS because of the pension reform. So, starting on page 5.
Thank you. So yes, starting on page 5, starts with a chart that kind of spells out where our CalPERS and our health and wellness benefits are budgeted. Again, these costs do not take into account what we discussed last night, and to just continue with the health and welfare conversation, which is actually on page 7. I did a little homework last night and this morning and talked to former Director Snyder. She actually budgeted 5% for our medical benefits, increasing year upon year. So I took those numbers, and with the salary reallocating the salaries, because part of the reorganizations was with the cap, we were going to move people up their ranges so they didn't have an immediate take home. I think for fiscal year 15-16, we can safely say that we're going to save $20,000, which is actually more than I told you, because I thought we would have a zero savings for that first year. And then the second year, probably $45,000. Now, if we have employees that leave and we have turnover and we can start back at the lower side of the salary ranges, that will increase our savings. We also won't necessarily look at increasing those salaries as we would have normally, because we already know that they're now going to be close to the top or topped out, or in some cases Y-rated. So we won't be putting in those normal merit increase projections that we would otherwise. So I think you had asked Madam City Manager earlier what the projected savings was going to be based off of last night, and I think safely we can say for the first year, on my very quick numbers today, about $150,000 between the reorganization and the changes in the benefits. That's for 15-16.
Wait. Didn't we just agree on a number of around 200,000?
That was a guesstimate.
Okay,
She
so
was
it's
able to go back and do the
150,000.
the detailed calculations.
Those are, yeah,
Okay.
those are based off of my numbers for
Thank you.
today. So that's really what I have, yes.
Question. So, what page is, was that early in the?
No, these numbers were not in your staff report at all.
These were what I calculated today based off of last night's.
150,000, okay, but I mean, we had a projected deficits for the 2 years in the staff report here somewhere?
Yes, that is
So-
on the last page of the staff report, the
Eight.
financial section. Page 8, 15, 16 is 256
So-
negative,
So that will now be 100,000,
pretty close.
okay.
And then with.
Again, very
yes.
roughly speaking, we haven't done a line item budget we just took a straight inflationary factor. Until we do a line item budget, I mean, these are our estimates at this point in time.
Okay.
I don't want you to be concerned when I come back and it's not exactly
No,
$100,000 less,
no,
okay?
that's fine, I'm just trying to get it in perspective here.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the NPDES costs that we just saved there, with this projected cost here, we're pretty darn close.
Yes,
Oh, we
And-
just
We're
balanced.
more than that. I think we're actually,
That's the
yes,
case.
you've made it up.
Yeah.
For
For 1 year.
I think we're,
Yes.
we actually have a bit of a,
I would be cautious
Reserve
to
there.
say because we haven't done the line items. There could be some other cost
Sure.
drivers that I'm not aware of, but hypothetically speaking, we've solved 15, 16.
But are we okay with going back that if those two pieces are in place, then all those recommendations we have with the contract to just,
I'll save them in case we
Yeah.
need them to
like
to
a
get to
plan B or
balance.
something?
We haven't gotten this far yet. I'm hoping that after we're done this evening,
20,
I get the authorization to start doing the detailed line item budget for the next 2 fiscal years, so I can come back with really good numbers. And based on this policy direction, what we need to take, we'll take, and what we don't, we won't.
and Director Cox, excuse me, Assistant City Manager Cox, did we have any PERS increase over are we foreseeing any PERS increase next year?
We do. I don't have the PERS numbers with me right now for next year, but we budget a 3% increase each year, and that has been a very good budget number for us. Some years it's a little higher, some years it's a little lower, sometimes the safety's higher, miscellaneous is lower. So we can definitely include that, what next year's PERS numbers are compared to this year's. I do have this year's in the staff report. Actually, next year's numbers, we won't get until for a few more months. We don't have them yet because we're
I'm just thinking with the
still-
salary scale,
Right.
the adjustments in salary scales that you might,
We included that in the savings number. We took into account the increased
That's
PERS
all.
because of the increased salaries.
okay,
That was in your 170 last night.
great.
Correct.
It was a net amount, not a,
We included all taxes, all PERS,
Good.
benefits, everything in
Thank
last
you.
night's number. So that's pretty much what I have on the health benefits side of things. Getting into the PERS side, which is back on page 5, there is a chart, again, that breaks it down. And you'll see that over 50% of our PERS costs are attributed to public safety, to the police and fire. We see a couple things with police and fire. One is that they just have a different benefit structure. It costs more money than the miscellaneous one does. The other thing that we see is with our police association, they are the only group that the city is still paying a portion of the employees' share of the pension. That's something that had been negotiated years ago. We have not been in negotiations with them recently to negotiate that away as we did with all of the other employees. Our contract with the police association is up at the end of this fiscal year. So it may be something that we look at negotiating when we get into those contract negotiations. But again, it's negotiations, so there's going to be, back and forth, and I can't at this time at all predict what that may be. But as Madam City Manager alluded to as well, we are starting to see some savings in our PERS costs, and those are actually mainly coming from the public safety, from the police officers specifically. In 2012, the Public Employees Pension Reform Act went into law, PEPRA, and it set new PERS formulas for new members. And a new member is anybody that has not worked in a PERS agency and been enrolled in PERS before. And so where we see the most turnover and the most new entry employees is in our entry-level police officers. So we're seeing a decrease in how much we're paying for them compared to our classic members, and you can see those differences on page 6 in the chart. You'll see that the police officers are at that 3% plus the 4% EPMC, with that high ticket number of 380,000. And then if you go down to the last line there, the 2.7 at 57, the PEPRA, those numbers are much smaller, and I should have been able to tell you how many, how many police officers that associated with, but I'm fairly certain that 21,000 number is for 3 police officers.
And probably a good way to see it, the chart just above it, you can see the 2.7 at 57 is 12% versus our current formula is
37.75%.
right. That's the difference. That's
Huge
savings. Huge.
So there are a lot of intricacies with PEPRA, and if you really want to see me get nerdy, I can go into those for you. But are you sure? But if you have questions that you'd like me to answer or specific areas you'd like me to go into, I'd be more than happy to do that.
One question, why, so the full-time fire, their CalPERS, that's under Pepper, right?
No, not necessarily.
No?
All of our fire captains actually started with us before PEPRA.
Ah, that's
and so
right
they
then.
were all, they were
Classic
already
members.
classic members.
That
But
is
they're
pretty
not, they have a difference, they have terms and conditions of employment that is different from the police officers' MOU, and so they are not receiving the EPMC, so we are paying less for them than we are paying for the police officers,
Got it.
the classic police officers.
Mhm. Well, I guess I have a question. I mean, there's not much we can do here in terms of, future hires, right? And, try to get a better MOU, but there's nothing that we can do for 15 and 16 and 16 and 17, really.
Well, this is presented for information. We need to revise the estimates based on these new numbers, because our numbers in the budget now were based upon what was in place, 2.5, 3 years ago. So they are gonna hopefully, help our numbers as opposed to make our numbers look worse. Council, took a major step in reducing our costs with the capping medical benefits. That needs to be put into these estimates and our new budget estimates. So it is presented for information purposes because you asked for it. We mentioned we're gonna be negotiating some new contracts. Those are things we need to keep in mind as we go forward.
Yep. I don't think so.
Yes,
I wanna-
well, I
Do we?
would say yes, we need to do something else this evening. At a minimum, if it's okay with the council, I'd like to proceed with starting to prepare our next 2-year budget based upon the direction you've provided this evening.
Yep.
We've pretty much, I'm confident, we took care of 15, 16, 16, 17.
I have a question on
We'll
that,
see
though.
how close we get.
Yeah, Madam City Manager, that 256 number, that number's been now, I've seen this number, for a couple months now, I guess, or since we started talking about the budget. But the MPDS budget was just, how long ago did we come up with that budget? Was that baked into this original number?
No.
So then just to clarify, we didn't save anything on this with the MPDS. That MPDS number was above and beyond.
Well, no, we would have had no, let me take that back. We did, because we put in, there is gonna be, I'm sorry, I take that back. We did move last fiscal year and the current fiscal year some MPDS costs in.
But it wasn't
And
the
I don't remember what we
I think it was like
budgeted.
50.
No, I think the grand total was in the $300,000 range again. I'm pretty sure, so that's part of the reason why we need to go back and do a detailed line item budget.
Yeah, but
So
I
we
guess,
could give you some accurate, there were and I wanna say, I remember the resolution, it was in the $300,000
I
range.
don't know if there's that, James, do you remember?
He didn't do it, I
Yeah.
did it.
Well, because here's the thing, I don't want to say that we've taken care of 2016 when I don't know if we have.
We don't know, you're right, which is why we need to go back and we need to start working with better numbers. We've got some policy direction. We need to start working with better numbers. We need to look at our revenues closer. We need to start preparing the next 2-year budget to see what we look like.
All right.
And we'll be dealing with real numbers. And we've got some general direction of what you would like us to do. I would assume that our current level of service today would continue unless you would like to give me direction that there's some area you'd like me to reduce, some service you'd like me to reduce.
Is anyone tallying things up here in terms of what we've just saved in the last 2 nights? Do we have a number?
So it's,
I'm,
Mhm.
and that counts the NPDES. right?
That's the
Not sure.
NPDS, the 3 library contracts, and
That was it.
what was the
and
other-
well, it's gonna be the
that was
healthcare savings.
The healthcare savings
Mhm.
that Alyssa mentioned, yes.
About how much time do you think, Madam City Manager, it will take to get more accurate numbers? And those, first part is just, even just for the first year, for 15, 16, and how
We
much
do,
longer?
we do
16,
both
17?
together. It's a minimum of a 4 to 5 month process to put a 2-year budget together.
So where we're at,
Oh.
it looks like possibly that we've balanced 2016 from what we're hearing.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but we're gonna be close.
Mhm.
But the problem is still 2017.
Mhm.
And if this carries forward, I'm just gonna guess that it's in the $600,000, $500,000 range, right?
Probably.
Okay, so,
Except you're gonna be picking up some more savings from your capping.
well, I thought that was baked in with the, yeah, okay, then.
It increases over time.
And we
That
did
gets
not
to be a
take
big
that into
number.
account, into these
Okay.
numbers, right?
Okay, well, then my guess was just wrong. You have a better.
No, we're probably
Okay.
500 to 600 still.
Okay, so, but the point is that we're still in a deficit mode. And what we're asking you to do then is to put together a budget that shows that deficit, right? Because we haven't given you direction of
Because
what to cut, how to
there-
cut $500,000.
I have mentioned it in the past, there's so many cost increases, and there's cost decreases. There's some significant revenue changes I've mentioned in the past.
Yeah.
We're getting money for our old CRA, for the successor agency.
Yeah.
Just received an email today that 150 we've been getting, we're probably not gonna get anymore.
Okay.
So
but the
there's some
point-
huge, there's
yeah.
still some huge things here, which until I think we get a chance to put it all together, it makes this conversation very difficult.
So, but what, the point I'm trying to make, though, is you're gonna go start the budget process, but you haven't been given direction from the council to close what we think is, roughly a $500,000 deficit, could be plus or minus 150,000, could be, whatever. But we're asking you to put together a budget with a deficit.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Well, yeah,
because
and-
until
To know
somebody
what
can come
the
up with
real
something.
deficit is.
I mean, we're waiting to get the
Right.
police and we'll,
Yep.
we expect as part of that process, you're going to give us options. Like, can the library be taken over? Can paramedic be taken over by somebody? Can, who the options are for the police and how, roughly estimates of how much savings. And at that time, we'll try to balance the 2017 budget, right?
We should be able to discuss revenue options too.
Sure, I mean, look.
At that
Revenue,
time.
expenditure,
At the
bring-
time, right.
Bring the whole plate out.
It's a, but I think, so technically, do we tell, because at what point do you finalize, because to Mayor Pro Tem's question, when do you finalize the 16, 17 numbers? So is it just a rolling, I'm trying to think, are we telling you really to come up with a budget, with a deficit for 16, 17, or?
Yes.
Is it just,
No, you're telling me to, okay, this, part of this exercise was to get some policy direction, because a lot of our money goes to those contracts and consultants and services, have some direction on what you're, at this point, willing to consider not doing. We talked about the MPDS, which is a big cost driver. We took care of some personnel stuff yesterday, cap benefits yesterday. I can't tell you if you're telling me to prepare a deficit budget or not until I put it together. There's a possibility it will still be negative. I don't know till we put it together. I think it's,
Well, no,
I
we
think I
know
have enough
16, 17 will be
policy. I
negative.
think I have enough policy direction because there isn't council consensus to eliminate any major services at this point in time.
Well,
I'm not
no.
hearing that.
So,
No.
and my point,
I would prepare
yeah.
a budget based upon how we exist today,
Mm-hmm.
the services we're providing today, with the direction you gave me last night and today, put our numbers together based on that,
Okay.
Yes.
and see what the bottom line looks like
That
when
would
we're
be
all said and done.
preliminary.
And it
it's
would be
that's the
preliminary.
point.
I'm not gonna generate a finalized budget document, but at least we'll have much better numbers.
Right.
Council can, it'll be 3-4 months, we'll come back with what those numbers look like. Then we can take the next step on whether it's further service reductions, or we look at the revenue side, or whatever it is we decide to do. But at least we'll have some good numbers
Mm-hmm.
to deal with at that, to work
guess-
with at that point.
I guess I just want to clarify, when Mayor Pro Tem said we're giving you direction to prepare a budget with a deficit, I wanted to make sure we weren't saying that final budget that you'll be preparing.
Oh, no, no,
Yeah,
no, 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 no,
because
no,
I
we're
felt
not.
like that's
no,
what was being,
no. Prepare, well, I could be preparing a budget with a deficit.
Yeah,
I
not a
didn't
final
say
one.
that's gonna be the
No.
approved budget.
Yeah.
It's gonna get massaged a bit till the council's ready to
And that's my
adopt
point,
a
was the
budget and make
rolling-
it our adopt
It's gonna
budget.
take some
Yeah.
time. Okay.
So you don't need to deal with budget now for at least 3-4 months, so you get a reprieve.
Any public comment before we say goodnight? God bless you for staying here. Not sure how you did. Any, any items for future agenda? I don't know, what the protocol is on a special meeting. Can you only agendize special meeting? No?
You can.
So, any, items for future agenda? Hearing
There
none?
was, if I could just, there was one item yesterday, just to clarify, a request that the water, Dr. Barbadoe study come back. At the end of the meeting, it wasn't mentioned to agendize it. I just wanted, that you do want that to come back also.
Yeah, and we had talked about that, I think it's,
Just wasn't mentioned at the end again, so I just wanted to make sure we can bring that back.
does it
next
have to be agendized,
Well, that's
or can
my
it just be a presentation at the beginning with,
We can
with
make it
water-
just a presentation at the beginning.
We're not asked to create a policy here.
No.
It's just.
There won't be any action. I don't think there's any action we need you to take. No, just an update of how it's going and what our results, preliminary results are showing. And it can be a presentation at the beginning. It
I'm
just
fine with that unless
wasn't
other
mentioned
council
again
members
at
wants
the
it.
ending, at the end of the meeting, so, okay.
I'm fine with that unless other council members want it to be an agendized item. Okay. All right. Can we adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, good night.